Hello again, friends! And you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru. I'm already going a little hoarse. Here on another summer's day, I'm your host, the great Brian Last, or your horse, however you want to see it. And here to ride the horse all the way to the finish line, the leader of the cult of Cornette, Mr. Jim Cornette.
If you want to ride the white horse. I like the way you put the accent on Jim Cornette's Drive Thru, like place the blame here. It's all his fault. I'm just a mere pawn in the game here. Already setting expectations somewhat low for the program.
Well, yeah.
At least on your part.
Then we can only exceed the expectations.
Well, that's to set the bar low, and then you can limbo over that son of a gun. Well, here we are again with another big day, as Lance Russell would say, of championship wrestling talk and a variety of other things. And you asked me right before we went on the air, well, have you got something to talk about today, Jimbo? And I got a hospital update. That's what's been going on for those of you who listened to the experience that we just did a few days ago. If you're going in order on these things, my Stacy's mother and stepfather, my in-laws, came in for what was supposed to be a 2-week vacation, not a 3-hour tour, but a 2-week vacation. And her mother ended up within 12 hours at urgent care and hospitalized with a kidney infection and all kinds of stuff. And obviously, it's been a little hectic around here with everybody's routine disrupted. I have caught up on the wrestling programs that we'll talk about later on. But the update to this is that she has been released from the hospital as of today, just mere moments ago, after 5 days. And she has to go back in about 10 days to have a procedure done, as they say. And then after she recuperates, she's hopefully going to be good as new, as opposed to the doctor she had previously that overlooked all of this shit that could have been handled a long time before it became an emergency. But it pays to have medical people in the family, Brian. You know, my cousin Larry's wife, Terry, is a nurse, has been for 50 years. And she said to me, oh, are they sending her to such and such medical firm to do this procedure? Yes. And is it Dr. Schleppenmuller? Yes, as a matter of fact, oh, good, I know him. He worked on my dad and Larry. He's the guy. So see it paid. Now, if you went to New York and you said, my cousin's wife is a nurse, what are the odds that she's still going to know any goddamn specific doctor that might be going into your internal organs at any point, or California or Chicago or some of these big fancy damn major metropolises?
He better do the job right, or he's the guy turns into, that's the guy.
Yeah, that's the guy. You know, but when you point a finger at somebody, you have 3 more pointing back at you. That's what Leapin' Lanny used to say. I swear to God, that was part of his babyface promo. That's why he was possibly more goody-goody as a babyface than Bob Backlund was during that immortal run. But
right, but it was fascinating because it was almost fake, but it couldn't be. And he's almost like that. But how could anyone be like that?
But he is.
Yeah.
And then, yes, but yeah, and in that voice too, when you point a finger at someone, you've got 3 more pointing back at yourself. There were profound words to live by. But anyway, yes, so the medical situation on that front, everything is moving along swimmingly, and we thank everyone for expressing their concern. And there's less concern to be had now. Everything's moving in the right direction. But if you still have some concern that you want to spread around some concern.
All right, well, I'm sure everyone sends their best wishes to Stacy and her family. Hopes everything works out well.
And it's their fault that I haven't come across anybody that I've had to cuss repeatedly or engage in some kind of entertaining banter with. It's been the tree guys were here, but I didn't even have time to go back there and harass them. They just They whacked a bunch of shit out. It got all the dead wood cut out of the trees in the back half an acre. So that way, when we have these windstorms, I won't be picking this shit up all the time. But I didn't have time to go back there and engage in witty banter with them. We got a little rain the other day, so I didn't have to take the hose out to the trees. What else do you want from me, Brian? I'm a retired senior citizen living a life out here in the suburbs.
All right, the Dynamite review is going to be a lot of fun today, folks. I'll tell you what, before we get going with any of this, and I'm really not in the Raw zone, but we got to talk about it.
I'm just a little chapped over Raw, but go ahead.
Can we start with a little classic audio?
Well, we can start with anything. This is your program, as you mention every time it comes off well.
Well, you mention it every time there's a problem.
Well, that's because I want to put the blame in the proper position there, pal.
All right, I have 2 bits of audio here. I'm going to let you choose what we hear. One of them is very short, and I actually don't remember this one. Funny. The name of the video is Funny. Jimmy Hart shoots straight with Jimmy Kent. Gets nailed. 1981 Memphis.
Oh, I think I remember, but go ahead.
That one, and then we also have, it's a little bit longer. And again, pre-fabulous ones. This is wow, Garen Shea uploaded this. There's a name we haven't heard in a very long time. This is an old upload, but I don't know whatever happened to Garen after he got sick.
Well, now.
What is the downer now? I see it.
I was about, we owe it to people also to resolve that fucking cliffhanger at some point, don't we? Did I hear? I don't want to say that I may have heard bad things about Garen's illness, but we don't know for sure. So
I don't know, but the name of the video is Memphis Wrestling. Stan Lane quits the First Family.
Well, I tell you, I love Stanfield, but also besides the fact that I think I want to hear Jimmy Hart and Jimmy Kent, because I believe I remember that deal. Also, if nobody has heard Jimmy Kent, and there's a name that doesn't get a lot of publicity these days in the modern world, but Jimmy Kent in the 70s was one of the weaseliest, heat-gettingest, connivingest heel managers in the wrestling business. And to be honest, he took it to a ridiculous level, the amount that he would interfere in the matches and try to get heat. And it didn't get the wrong kind of heat with those people because the heels were over, the babyface were over, and they just got mad. But if you go back and look at it now, it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, fucking, you're taking away from everything. But he could also take the goddamnedest bumps, and he would run from the baby faces and dive away from them through and over the ropes in insane fashion and come off the top and do all this other shit. But he was active as fuck. And he was also country as a mud fence. And so if this is the interview I'm thinking about, it might be funny just to hear a little Jimmy Kent from 1981 and 2024.
Well, let's go to this. And again, 1981, Jimmy Hart and the First Family is amazing stuff. Everything in his run until like the very end in Memphis is amazing, but 81 is really the year that stands out. Anytime you put him with Chick Donovan, it really stands out. But
well, the talent in the First Family was the best at that point, and also that was the first year of Jimmy Hart's angle with and program with Lawler, and he had so many stars that they brought in that he could wear. Austin Idol and Joe LeDuc and Hulk Hogan and the Funk Brothers and blah blah blah. 81 was just amazing. But go ahead.
Let's go to this video right now. Jimmy Hart shoots straight with Jimmy Kent and gets nailed.
Sullivan as they were.
Hold on, it started right in the middle of it. Hold on, Jace. Sorry. Here we go.
Hey, this, of course, is another continuing story that Jimmy Hart is now the manager. Yeah, well,
right where it belongs,
yeah, I see where it belongs. I understand that.
Look at this, Memphis, look at this.
Yeah. You know, and I think it's all fitting that you should have it around your waist, too, because you were as much responsible for the upset win of Ferris and Sullivan as they were in there, and I know you got.
Shut up, Porky! Tell that big fat slob to shut up over there. I'm so sick of these people down here. I'm paying. Let me tell you something. I am on top of the world right now, baby. Because did I not tell you? Did I not tell you? I said one of these days I'm going to be right back with the Southern Heavyweight Champions, and it couldn't please me more better because that big fat Dream machine. You know what? Sure, it hurt me a little bit when the Dream left me. You know why? Because I had so much advertising space sold on that big fat stomach of his, man. It cost me a lot of money. That's the only way he cost me any money. I'm the one that put the woo in the Dream, baby.
Let me stop this for a second. Jimmy Hart comes in as Jerry Lawler's manager when he didn't really have to say anything. He just stood there with a mustache.
Yes.
Then he becomes the manager. This is a very short period of time before you end up becoming a manager. You've always talked about Bobby Heenan and how he was the greatest in your eyes, and you got to see him and what an influence he was. Seeing Jimmy Hart just in a couple of years burst into this, I mean, this is amazing. Did it change the way you saw managers? I mean, what did you think of this as it was happening? You're just a couple of years from getting into the business when it really starts.
Jimmy was a big influence on me. More, how can I phrase this where people understand it? More in the matches and in the active part of managing than promos necessarily. And I'm not saying that he wasn't some of that as well, but we both got influenced by Memphis wrestling because Jimmy was a fan. He was at the goddamn Sputnik Monroe and Billy Wicks match
in 59.
Yes, he was. You know, when he was a kid, he was getting in free at the Ellis Auditorium for selling programs and, you know, whatever the case. And, you know, he took the sojourn into music, but he still always lived in Memphis. When he, you know, was still touring, he was always back there. Point is, and Lawler influenced both of us, but Jimmy did it like Jimmy did it, and I did it like I did it. As far as and Jimmy had that personality. Oh, baby, but that was the rock and roll part, right? That was him being the, you know, do people know that he did have a legitimate gold record with Keep On Dancing, and Jimmy Hart and the Gentrys were, you know, a group that was on Dick Clark's American Bandstand and blah, blah, blah in the 60s. So he had the show business outfits and the monogram music notes on his jackets, and that was him because that was him. And so I couldn't come out, oh yeah, baby, your baby this, because he was showbiz, I wasn't. I was the rich kid. So I had to kind of be that way. But the influence that he had on me was seeing how they booked him and what he did at ringside and what he did to keep heat and, you know, how not to get in the way and, you know, things like that. So, yeah, he did have an influence on me. But remember, he started in, well, let's say September, October of 79, and really didn't do anything until February of the next year when Lawler broke his leg. And that's when they started putting the emphasis on him. So he had to suddenly become the motor mouth, the heel that was carrying the whole territory when he'd been in the business doing none of that, just being Lawler's sidekick for, 6 months. So he just turned it on instantly because he had to. At least when I started, there wasn't that much pressure on me. I could actually start talking from the beginning, but the whole territory wasn't fucking counting on me, thank God. You know, and I got some experience, as we've noted, and, you know, got some practice and then got out of there and did something else. But anyway, let's go back to the audio, though. I didn't mean to continue droning on.
No, real quick, one question about that. Was that one of the things that made Lawler so different and really so effective, was that he was almost like a heel manager, but he was a wrestler? Because there weren't a lot of heels who talked like that or behaved like that.
Yes, that's why, you know, he was gangly and awkward in the pictures that you see from his rookie year, and no video exists. But you know, that Knoxville TV is from
72?
December of 72.
Yeah.
So that's 2 years after his first match, and you could tell that he was carrying it in the ring. He was carrying his end, I should say, but already he was a fucking promo, a genius. That's why they put him together with Jim White, because Jim White was the veteran and he could kind of lead the match, and Sam Bass was the stooge manager that Lawler would keep as a heel through most of his life. But Lawler became the star within the first couple, weeks that they saw the team on television, because nobody talked like that then. Nobody talked like that. Anyway.
Let's go back to this audio. Jimmy Hart talking to Lance Russell. We're waiting on Jimmy Kent.
You feel fantastic, Russell. What do you want to say to me? Anything you want to say?
Oh, I just want to find out if you, in fact, are going to be able to sustain. You've had a little trouble keeping some of your high-priced talent in line in here, and Dutch Mantel.
Well, I don't care.
Dream.
Just a minute. Excuse me just a minute.
Come on, Jimmy.
Lance Russell, I want to talk to you.
No, listen, Jimmy, I told you not today. You're not scheduled for an interview.
Look, I've been trying to run you down. I've been trying to get an opportunity to talk to you.
Yeah, I know you've been
give
trying
Hart,
to run everybody
you,
down.
You give Hart all the chance to talk. You give the Dream, the Dundee,
Jimmy,
all of them. I don't have
get out of
another
here.
chance.
We don't need you in here. I have an interview with Jimmy
Why
Hart.
come I can't make an interview?
Well,
I'm tired of being on the bottom.
I'll tell you.
I can't never get a chance to make an interview.
I can handle it
I
where
can't get
you
a
don't
time
have to
slot
ever have
because
any
nobody gives me a chance to
Now,
say
just get out of here.
Excuse me.
Let me stop it before Jimmy Hart jumps in, because you're losing it over there.
Again, Jimmy Kent, they used him. He was the first manager of Jerry Lawler and Jim White for about 6 weeks. And then they switched and got Sam Bass, because they had worked with Sam Bass in Alabama and they knew each other. But also, Jimmy took all the fucking attention. The motor mouth, right? That Southern accent. He's, like I said, he's so fucking country. And that he looks like one of the Little Rascals facially also. The space between his teeth in the front and that moon-shaped face. But he would just, with the Bounty Hunters, Jerry and David Novak, they used him on top, and he was with them for a couple of years in the early 70s. And as I said, what a fucking bumping machine, and just a little squirt, right? Like he may be 195 pounds and he's not 5'10", but he could work in his own way. And he just always tickled me to watch him. But he's the guy that one time when he left the Tennessee territory, he was in a loser leave town match in Tupelo, Mississippi, and he showed up to the arena in front of the fans with his car pulling a U-Haul with his family in the back seat. And what the fuck? And he was managing the Bounty Hunters in 1975 in the Louisville Gardens, and got people so riled up, they started hitting the fucking ring. And there was this guy with, what was it? Oh, God damn it. Room 222. Was that the one? Was there a kid in the 70s, a white guy, but he had like a big afro? I'm trying to remember what show it was on. But this white guy with a giant afro, for some reason, fucking came into the goddamn ring, and Jerry Novak grabbed a hold of him and with one hand in his hair and started punching him in the face with the other. And by the time the guy dropped off the edge of the apron, it looked like he'd pulled his wig off. He had almost all the guy's hair still in his hand.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, Jimmy Kent, and he's out there going crazy. Anyway, go ahead. Continue on with this dissertation.
Yeah, one more thing. What do you think of Lance Russell's role here? It's not just I'm the commentator, I'm the host, I'm the announcer, you can't mess with me. He is authority. I'll make sure you can never come out here again and do an interview.
Yeah. Well, and see, that's the thing. Also, what they were doing with Jimmy, I'm glad you mentioned it, at this time was, obviously you can tell he's pissed off for lack of respect, but he had come in, I think he had a run with the Bounty Hunters at this point, and then he was on the way out, and they were going to do something with him and Jimmy, some special fucking gimmick manager match or whatever. But since the people kind of saw Jimmy Kent at that point as an underneath manager, they decided to go, all right, let's go with it. He's been here in the past. He's done well, but now everybody sees he's jerking the curtain or it ain't happening. So he's mad at Jimmy Hart, and let's see these two weasels get in a fucking cat fight.
Well, let's go back to this now.
Jimmy, I might be able to help you out, man, if you listen to me. I want to tell you something. If you don't mind me saying this, I'm going to shoot straight with you, and I'll tell you exactly why you're on the bottom and I'm on top. First of all, turn right around here to this camera. Get a close-up of this. Look at this red on this man's neck right here.
Jimmy, now,
look at this.
you
No,
guys
come on.
knock it off.
Wait a minute. I'm shooting straight with you. You want to know the truth? And I'll tell you the truth. When I was in the 7th grade of high school, man, I used to come out and see you at ringside, and I thought, boy, Jimmy Kent, he's quick, he's fast, he's sharp. Until I got to know you, man, you're a complete...
Okay.
Look, wait a minute. I'm talking now. I'm helping the man out here. Listen to me. Look at this. Look at this big fat beer belly. Look at the big fat belly, man. You're ignorant like the people out here are ignorant. From now on, I'm going to be from Boston, Massachusetts, baby. That's where you ought to be from, maybe. But see, you fit in with all these people. He fits in with these people out here. Now, did I not shoot straight with him, or did I not shoot straight? You're ignorant. That's just the whole thing. You're stupid,
Jimmy,
man.
okay, I'm through with
You know what? I'm trying to help the man out. I'm trying to help the man out. I'm trying to help you out, man.
Both of you, interviews
so
terminated.
Look at yourself. Look at your boots, your pants. Look at your shirt tail.
Okay,
right
we've
there.
got plenty of action. Hey, come on, Jimmy. Jimmy!
Let me tell you one thing. I tell you what, this town ain't big enough for the both of us.
Now,
You understand me?
Hey, listen.
It ain't big enough for the
I'm
both of us.
telling you.
And I'm going to stop your head in.
I'm gonna
challenge you to a match,
If you don't get out of here,
get your men.
you and your men never will appear on this television. Now,
You
get out.
understand me?
Don't hit
I'm
him.
gonna kick your
Don't hit
butt.
him, Jimmy.
Don't hit him.
Now, get out of here. I don't want to have any more of this stuff. We're going to take time out, and we're going
I'll tell you
to take time out, and we'll be back.
Well, stop it there. How could anyone watch that and not have to stay to see how this is going to end?
Yes, and the people, when Jimmy had too many Jimmys there, but when Jimmy can't pop Jimmy Hart, the people scream, and he said, this town ain't big enough for the both of us. And Jimmy Kent would be leaving because it wasn't, but Jimmy Hart was on top.
By the way, was Jimmy Hart lying about his age back then? I used to
Yes.
see it ringside when I was in 7th grade. No,
see,
way.
No, but that's his way of basically making people think that Jimmy Kent's, insulting his age, right? Yeah, you were a big deal before electricity. I used to carry your bags in. Jimmy, how old? Hold on. Let me do some math here. Let me think about this. 1940. Jimmy Hart was 37 there. Jimmy Kent had been in the business since let's say he was born in. I think Jimmy Kent may have been about 3 or 4 years younger than Jimmy Hart.
According to something I see here, he was born December 1946.
But then I think he's 3 years younger than Jimmy Hart. But see, he had started young, whereas Jimmy with the music Jimmy didn't get in the wrestling business till he was 35, 36? So, but it's all relative because Jimmy Hart was new to the fans there, but they'd seen Jimmy Kent from 10 years before.
Well, there it is, some classic audio from Memphis, 1981. We'll keep this trend going next time, but the other thing that stands out, I always say it, I critique, I criticize, I put down the commentators on a lot of these shows. When you hear someone like Lance Russell, who's a master at it, just hosting the show, making things move along.
Yes.
How could you take anyone else seriously?
And that's the thing, because he took the things that were happening seriously and he reacted like Lance Russell would react. And he had magnetism and charisma also. And people trusted him and they liked him. He was the most popular person on the program. And so it can, even though all this chaos was going on with these weird, wild, wacky, wonderful people that were on this wrestling program, Lance looked like the guy that, lived next door, your uncle, somebody in a suit that you would invite over for Sunday dinner. He wasn't wearing a mask, claiming to have wrestled at one point professionally in front of 14 people in a fucking sardine can. Or he wasn't putting on airs and putting on the announcer voice as he talks about the next paper. He was calling it. And remember when we listen to the audio, and especially you go back to those films in the 70s of the main events in the Mid-South Coliseum, they look and sound like old 50s fight films. The people are going out of their fucking mind. They're ooh every time a guy lands a punch. Oh! And that voice pierces through all that stuff. And it's because he started in radio. So you can tell what's going on without him resorting to calling every move by name. You can tell who has the advantage and who's at the disadvantage and how much trouble the guy's in by just listening to him.
Well, I'll just listen to you because we're going to go from classic wrestling, the good stuff,
Yeah.
to WWE Raw. It's all in the eye of the beholder.
Well, here's the thing. Now you've surprised me here with the classic audio, because what I was going to say was that this Raw for July 15th from Dayton, Ohio, by the way, at the Nutter Center. There's another Nutter Center in the world. I'd like to know about it. That's the only Nutter Center I know of. But this now, I hate to praise it after praising what Lance Russell and those fellas were doing, because it's two completely different things. This is not a professional wrestling program anymore. However, I think it's maybe the first one that I actually fucking liked, even though it has nothing to do with goddamn wrestling. Whatever it is that you want to call what they're doing, whether it's the sports entertainment or the reality television, they know how to tell a good story these days. Was Vince McMahon really that much of an anchor around their fucking necks all this time?
Yeah, because I think it's one of those things you could always look to and point at least going back 30 years, if not longer, but at least 30 years. The idea that Vince was handed things that he didn't make as much money as he could with because he couldn't understand how to get it right, because it was already right. And he tinkered with everything. I just saw a video the other day of The Undertaker talking. Finally, he says something negative about Vince. He goes, yeah, he had some bad ideas. He wanted me to do this, and I had to put my foot down about throwing his hat out into the crowd. I forgot about that. The Undertaker, like Leaping Lanny, frisbeeing his hat into the crowd. Yeah, Vince, that may not go with the gimmick, but Vince had lots of wacky ideas, and the entire show was built towards Vince. He was the audience. It was an audience of one. We all just got to watch. Now, it's a conscious effort to make the fans, to have the fans as invested as they can be, as opposed to taking the fans for granted. This is wrestling. They'll like it. I'm going to present what I want. They'll shut up. Because that's what it was under Vince.
Well, and to make the talent what they can be, rather than what Vince sees that he wanted to call Vader the Mastodon. He wanted to make Mick Foley Mason the Mutilator. I mean, he would get these ideas. Need I go any further than the maximum male models?
See, that's the conundrum, because you could point to all the success, but you could say, well, maybe if he had brought them in as the Road Warriors as heels against Demolition, who were wildly over as baby faces, that would have been different. But they were the LOD instead, wearing red instead of black. And it was more kid-friendly. There are one mistake after another, you could say, like that, where even with the success, why are you doing this? What are you doing? And you could look at the other options and go, they may have made more money in the short term and long term if they had done something different.
And with the exception of having to change everyone and the constant goofy gimmicks, the TL hoppers and the, just killing people's chances, right? He had a grip on the top shit, the main event stuff, that with those guys that were in the mix, it seemed like he had a grip on that, and then he would let all of us, everyone involved, fill in the pieces. But of late, this is a drastic turnaround back to this shit makes sense from 1 week to the next, 1 month to the next, 1 year to the next, without constant last-minute changes and whim changes and whatever the fuck. These people will allow more legitimacy to creep in rather than his weird version of, wanting to be the Walt Disney of wrestling. So if you don't watch the matches, is what I'm trying to say. There's no reason to. You can if you like, if you've got that much time, but just watch the people talk and interact with each other. And it's a heck of a story they tell, but it also moves somewhat slowly. So this is basically was Raw as Ripley, right?
Well, and Braun, maybe.
Well, Raw is Ripley with guest stars. Because through the whole thing, I'm going to give you the whole goddamn Rhea thing from start to finish instead of going in chronological order. We'll save a lot of time. But again, I've said I don't like Liv Morgan's acting or her wrestling. I don't know if you blew an air hose in her right ear, if air would come out the left ear or not.
Where the hell is that coming from? She's playing a character.
But wasn't she the one that got pulled over and the cop read her notebooks and she wanted to win an Oscar?
Yeah, that's a goal to have.
Well, and I'd like to go to the moon one day.
You can write that down. It may happen.
Yeah.
You want to spend a few bucks? It could happen.
But anyway, the comedic aspect with Damian Priest being involved in it, and they're trying to make him the world champion with the whole Judgment Day Club, all the things I've said, blah. But when they did the package of Rhea and Liv and Dom and their various triangle since Rhea's been hurt, they tell a hell of a story, and it all fits. They can go back and put these things in, and nothing's out of place. Did you notice that, or did you pay any attention to the cold open of the program?
No, I did pay attention because I wanted to see how they were going to start. I figured it would be with Rhea Ripley, and I've enjoyed Liv Morgan in this stuff. She's made the Judgment Day more tolerable because I think she's been good in this role. I know you don't think she can act. If this is her acting, I think she's good, and she's not as small as you make her out to be. There are plenty of women in that company and in AEW you can point to and say they're a lot smaller.
Well, then when I point at them, I got 3 more fingers pointing back at me. So what am I going to do with those 3 fingers?
Well, do what Lanny would do. Blow it yourself.
The point I'm trying to make, Brian, is that they fit this all together. They lay the story out. It makes sense. It's not wishy-washy people doing nonsensical things like you see on some of the broadcasts from some of the promotions these days. And then here comes Rhea Ripley through the back, through Gorilla, the Fancy Dan entrance shot they're doing these days, the music straight into the arena, huge pop. What an entrance she's got, the attitude, she's a megastar. The fans are chanting, "Mommy, Mommy." And she says Mommy's home, and she's as over as any of the guys. And as soon as she mentions Liv Morgan, the big boos from the people are into it. They're trained already. She didn't even have to speak. I'll deal with Dominic later, but Liv Morgan, boo! She wants her title back. She calls Liv out. And then there's Dominic music. And that's the theme of the whole show. Is Dominic coming out mealy-mouthed with his head down and shit-kicking, body language and trying to apologize. Of course, they're booing him every time he opens his mouth. Rhea turns her back on him. Then Liv gets on the screen and cuts a promo on Rhea, is burying Dominic. Oh, we've had such fun. And then now she says, Mommy may be home, but Liv is finally on top. So again, the people they're hanging on this, right? And they're popping in all the right places. And so Rhea challenges Liv for SummerSlam for the title, big pop. Then Liv blows Dominic a kiss, and Says, I'm not the same person I used to be. I'm going to beat you. And hi, Dom, Daddy Dom. And then Rhea comes back and blows her a kiss and just poses and gets a fucking pop and walks away from Dominic with him chasing behind her to give her a black rose that she then throws over her shoulder and walks off on him. And then the break is just a momentary interlude because they're in the back now and Dominic is still after Rhea and she won't listen. She slams a door in his face. And then she opens it and throws his flowers out all over him. And through this whole thing all night, Damian Priest is laughing at him and stirring the shit. Well, you better do this, and that's bad advice. So it's like this is my pride. The world champion that's struggling to be seen as a world champion is joking around in the back with, him or JD or Finn or Carlito or whatever, and it just doesn't Damian seem too calm and steady and level-headed and personable to be a really fearsome world champion?
Even with Rhea here, it's the one problem I have complained about before. We see her out there doing a fired-up promo, and then next thing, hey, Damian, how are you?
Oh, yes.
I'm fine, how are you? Just what is this shit backstage? And the only thing I'll say is Carlito has come into his own, probably saving himself a job for a while.
Yeah.
He's been entertaining in this. He's done well in, this version of they needed goof in the Judgment Day, because it was R-Truth before this. But it feels like, again, I repeat what I've said before because you asked, Damian Priest does not feel like a world champion right now. And if he's going to be a transitional champion in terms of Gunther about to go on a run, or if they're going to swerve us from that because it seems obvious, which would be a mistake, but then they got to figure out something to do with him. And if he's going to break away from Judgment Day, he shouldn't be so nonchalant around everything right now.
Somehow somebody affiliated with the Judgment Day can cost him the title to Gunther and facilitate the eventual separation of the parties.
What if he ran off with Liv?
Now, what now?
What if it turned out that Liv was actually Priest's girl this whole time? That he was pulling some kind of manipulative strings behind the scenes to cause friction with Dominic and Rhea for who knows what reason?
No, I'm thinking Finn either does something that he's not supposed to do or doesn't do something he's supposed to do. And that way Gunther beats Priest for the title, but there's Priest and Finn, boom, boom, and the other guys are on Finn's side, hopefully. Something of that nature. But nevertheless, that's not till later, and this is now, because then we're in the back with Rhea. And as you mentioned, thanks, Damian, for keeping the Judgment Day together while I was gone. And just, and why is Carlito in our clubhouse? And then Dominic comes in and apologizes again. She tells him off again and walks out. And then they do, some more stuff and have a match with the ladies. And then they're back in the back with Dominic and Priest. Why did you warn me last week, Dominic says, that you knew Rhea was here and she was going to see Liv on top of me, giving me the old fucking reverse cowgirl or whatever. Well, you were too busy with Liv. Well, and then Jey Uso comes in. And boy, I don't know how long this mass hypnosis is going to last with Jey Uso if his matches get any more silly, hot doggy, and work looks sloppier. Because a man cannot live on personality alone forever. But anyway, Jay came in and asked if Rhea Ripley was single. And then Damian's like, maybe. And now Dominic's fucking fuming. And Priest said, well, you got to show Jey Uso who Rhea Ripley belongs to. And if Dominic runs off to do that, and Priest is laughing. What is this, high school? It's a great story with all of the stooges. Rhea Ripley's a star and she's ignoring all these fucking people.
It's a great story by John Hughes.
There you go.
It's an 80s teen movie being played by these wrestlers from various countries here in this Judgment Day. Australia, Ireland, Queens, Mexico.
And Guadalajara. Don't forget there. Or that's Guatemala. I'm sorry. The country of Guadalajara. But now this intersects here with some main event bullshit going on, because at this point, they've set Gunther up earlier in the show with a promo and a video package, which had brilliant material and brilliant delivery. And the delivery obviously is his. The material, if it's not his, because it fits him perfectly, then they got brilliant writers all of a fucking second, because this guy should be saying this shit. It fits perfectly. And he's a modern heel with a timeless gimmick. But for this 2.5 minutes or whatever it was, this is how you build a star. So then, the top of the 9 o'clock hour, Priest leaves John Hughes High School so that he can go out to the ring and say, "All rise for El Campeon." And the response was kind of, eh. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
And that, I think both of these things cannot coexist. But anyway, so he calls Gunther out immediately, and Gunther, he does the same thing. He's got same kind of great heel attitude and delivery and condescension. And he said, just, I'll do you a favor, save you the embarrassment, hand me my title and move on right now. And Priest does the thing where they're trying to obviously make him a baby face here, with not only with his opponent being a heel, but also with the sympathetic story that he's saying, I fought on the streets for 20 years just to get here. And you've been given everything, Gunther. And then it's almost like an AEW promo. Tell me what you think, Brian. But when he's saying to Gunther, if you think this is so easy and this has never been your dream, you just came here because you're so good, we don't need you here if this has never been your dream. That's AEW-ish or centric, isn't it?
Currently, but that starts with WWE. Once the whole boyhood dream thing for Shawn Michaels started, and even that was bullshit because Shawn Michaels didn't grow up watching WWF in San Antonio. All of a sudden, it became about people who appreciate the privilege of being in WWE because it was their childhood dream. And that's why you see so many promos now from adults talking about how the child in them would be so happy to see what they are doing right now on wrestling and the rough journey it took to get to TV to make all this money.
Well, anyway, Gunther was strong and he was a heel. You know, being on the streets is a choice. Blame your parents for not giving you a good life. Just to fucking compare Priest and the fans to street trash. And I don't think Priest wasn't strong enough coming back, whether it's the material, the delivery, the attitude, whatever. Except when he finally got to people at the end, they almost had to. It was like, if they didn't cheer "God Bless America" or something, when he called him a boring, privileged, conceited scumbag. But, it wasn't...
What's the privilege exactly? That he won his matches?
Well, apparently, and also because he just blew through NXT, because they don't say that, well, Gunther's been around, Walter, been around for 15 fucking years or whatever on his own. Was a little fat, chubby kid. But they're telling the best story they can tell, and Priest didn't have, to me, the material or the fire to bow back up at a heel like Gunther when they're trying to obviously establish him as a upcoming babyface world champion. And then that's, then we...
Does Gunther have to win the belt at SummerSlam? Can you see any way around that?
Boy, I sure hope he does, because I don't know why he would lose. And at this point, like I said, if they're going in this direction anyway, where Priest will be out of the Judgment Day and a babyface single, and then obviously Rhea is already the biggest babyface female on the roster and over most males. They're going to separate her because she and Dominic are going to be some issues. So the Judgment Day will probably, if it continues as a group, I would think would be Finn and JD, who are a tag team, and Dominic potentially and Liv, so that Rhea could have somebody to interact with. And, that's kind of where the sides are going to go, one would think.
All right.
But nevertheless, so then that's the thing, is that then they have Priest and Brown Strongman. So there's the big, fucking bucket-headed babyface against Damian Priest, after Priest has just been out there telling people how he worked and lived on the streets for years, selling pencils on the street corner and walking uphill in a blizzard both ways and now he's against another babyface. And, honestly, like I said, I like the show if I don't watch the matches. Brown's matches are never really technical masterpieces, but for Priest, here was the finish. 3 spin kicks to the head that didn't look very good. And then the other guy picks him up for a slam and his knee buckles, and Priest hits kind of a half-ass stinger splash in the corner and a choke slam 1, 2, 3. And he wasn't impressive winning this match. Then Gunther comes in and they get in a little fight. And Gunther rolls out and they yell at each other. I'm wanting to support Priest, but I'm thinking he may need the foundation specialist to even his concrete. That shit can get off a level, concrete and asphalt, driveways, things of that nature, paving stones.
Well, with that, we won't be telling you about a paving stone sponsor. We don't have one currently. However, Jim, maybe Priest needs some advice. Maybe he just needs to get on the phone and call somebody. If you're going to do that, you need a good plan.
Well, you need a plan of how to get to your emergency phone. Now, everybody needs an emergency phone, right? That's in case of cataclysmic weather like tornadoes, hurricanes, monsoons, whether guerrilla or otherwise. What you do is you take a phone and you bury it in a cardboard box 1 foot deep at a special marked place in your backyard. And that way, if all your power is out, you're cut off from society, you can take a shovel out in the backyard, dig this fucking phone up, open that box, and call the authorities. You've heard about these plans, haven't you?
No, I've not heard about. No one. You shouldn't be burying phones a foot deep in your.
It's
your
a
property.
big thing. It's a big thing in the suburbs now. All the people awaiting the next cataclysm or catastrophe or potentially January 2025, whatever horrible thing happens to the world. That way, you've got a phone buried in case of emergency. You don't want to spend a lot of money, folks, on that phone plan, but you got to make sure you got a phone plan. Because if you went out in the middle of nuclear fallout and you had no electricity and no phone service and everybody in the whole world is off the grid, if you went out in your backyard and took a shovel and dug a foot down to a cardboard shoebox that you then opened up your special emergency phone, and you didn't have any goddamn phone plan, wouldn't you feel like an idiot? So what everybody needs to do to make sure they don't lose money or waste money is right now go to Mint Mobile, because Mint Mobile has a special unlimited deal, the high-speed data, the unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network, $15 a month. That means as long as you keep this thing operating, For heaven's sake, it's only going to cost you a couple of $100 a year to bury that phone in the backyard. And right now,
well, again, this is for your phones that you use, not phones you bury in your backyard. Let's talk about applications of Mint Mobile for people with active phones they are using on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, well, if you just want to just willy-nilly just use a phone right out in public in front of God and everybody, yeah, it's still $15 a month. And you can text anybody you want, and you can talk to anybody you want as long as they'll speak to you. You can send pictures of your family, your friends, your vacation, your pets, your genitals, whatever you like. And that's just as many as you want. So I'll tell you what, if you send a picture of your dick to 1,500 people, sooner or later, you're going to get some idiot that says, I like that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about how that works, but let's advise people not to do that.
Well, you got to spread your net out, and your network.
Just go on Tinder. No genital photos necessary.
On Tinder?
Or go on any dating site.
Tender, legal Tinder?
You don't know what Tinder is?
I don't understand this computer technology these days, but Mint Mobile does, and they are here to rescue you and all your friends. See, your friends and your family, and even if your family, if you don't particularly like members of your family, they can still get the phone plan. Just don't give them your number. But they can do $15 a month is where it starts, folks. Say bye-bye to the overpriced wireless plan. You got to be a new customer. It's a new customer offer. But you go to mintmobile.com/JCE, the 3-month premium wireless plan, $15 a month, $45 in total. See, I did the math for you. That's if you got a smartphone, you can just do the math on your phone because it's smart. And then you can call somebody and tell them what the answer is because you got a phone plan from mintmobile.com/JCE. Now, you got to pay the $45 up front for the 3 months because a lot of you people are goddamn just deadbeats. Let's just face it.
All right, let's face it. You shouldn't be insulting everyone. What are you doing?
As many people as are listening to this program, we're reaching a pretty good-sized, segment of the deadbeat demographic. But if you're going to have to pay people up front because you got bad credit, you might as well not pay them much up front. Hey, what's $45 over 3 months? That's $15 a month. That is $3.75 a week, except for months with 31 days, in which case it would be a little higher and in Alaska and Hawaii. So right now, go to mintmobile.com/JCE and spend approximately as much money as I was just talking about, which will be less than you would spend if you go somewhere else to do the same goddamn thing.
Mintmobile.com's
yes.
Code JCE.
/JCE.
/JCE. If only we could. But,
hey!
Let's get back to whatever you're going to say about WWE Raw.
Well, that's where I was going. Then we had an interlude of a girls' 6-man tag team match, and then we're still with the Judgment Day.
6-woman, not 6-man.
Well, it was a girls' 6-man tag match. A women's 6-man tag match.
No, it would be a girls, well, you don't say girls, it would be a 6-woman tag match.
Well, 6 of the women are having a 6-man tag match. But then they went back to the Judgment Day. And again, John Hughes, is that what you said? So now JD and Finn, they get their little scene in the rom-com with Rhea. And she says it's okay that Liv helped him win the tag team title because then they've got the belts. Fuck her. And Dominic comes in and says, hey, I'm going to teach Jey Uso a lesson and nobody talks about mommy like that. And Rhea, are you stupid? What are you picking a fight with him for? Well, I'll cancel it. And he said, what are you, a coward? You're my mommy and you belong to me. Excuse me, and walks off again. And it just, This is like a daily soap opera. Remember in the summertime when you were out of school, when you were like in the 3rd grade, and the only thing, well, no, you don't, but the only thing on daytime television was soap operas. And these people just had conversation after conversation. And, finally, once every 6 months, somebody would have a major operation or be hit by a fucking car. Otherwise, they were just having coffee in their living room talking. Or at the hospital. You ever see General Hospital?
I have, yes.
They did a lot of talking at the hospital.
They did. You think it's more like that or more like Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman?
I liked Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman.
Did you watch it when it aired?
Yes. It was 11 o'clock. 11:30. I'm sorry, I tell a lie. It would have been right after the local news. At first run, I watched it. And Victor Killian, who was the grandfather who played the Fernwood Flasher, was also in some of the classic Universal horror films of the 1930s and early 40s, including, oh, goddamn it, he was in the Devil Doll, where the doctor shrunk, Cyclops shrunk well, that's 2 different movies, but shrunk them down to tiny little size, did Dr. Cyclops, who was Albert Decker. I remember that much. Are we going back to Raw?
Any thoughts on the recent passing of Martin Mull?
I didn't even know he was sick. See, I've been out of the loop here lately. What happened to him?
He passed away.
Well, I mean, what was the cause? Do you have...
hold on, I don't have it in front of me. Martin Mull.
Because Martin Mull, he not only, after Mary Hartman kind of ran its course, they turned it into a comedy talk show, a parody of The Tonight Show or Merv Griffin or whatever, called Fernwood Tonight, and he was the host of that, and the kind of Bill Murray-ish smarmy lounge singer, except he was the smarmy television personality. And he was great. Yeah, Fred Willard was the sidekick.
Yeah.
Before WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yeah, they were good together. He died age 80 of a long-term illness. It's not explained what that is, but 80 years old.
Holy shit, he was 80? Well, when I was 18, he would have been like 35. Holy shit, I'm fucking older than I thought. I'm as close to 80 now as he was then, or something.
Any thoughts on the passing of your longtime family friend, Richard Simmons?
It hurt deep down in my bowels. I was sorry to hear about Richard's passing because of all the many happy hours that we had spent on the treadmill and on the various workout machines and knee bends. And actually, he used to have me just bend over. And he would just say, just bend over and stay there. And I said, how am I getting any exercise like this? And then, well, I won't go into the rest of it.
This is not really much of a tribute to the man. I don't know what you're doing. On that topic, any thoughts on the passing of your longtime family friend, Dr. Ruth?
Well, no, Dr. Ruth and my mother didn't get along. Mama Cornette thought that Dr. Ruth was a potty mouth. Saying those various things and all those biological terms.
All right.
They didn't say polite women didn't say that on television back in the 30s.
Well, this has been Obituaries. Back to Raw.
Anyway, so should we take the side trip? No, let's finish up the whole Judgment Day Rhea Ripley-ness thing here, because there was something else. Ah, yes. So then Dominic fights Jey Uso, and they opened up with what I may categorize as the worst punches I've ever seen thrown in a professional wrestling match, and I fast-forwarded to the finish, which was basically Liv and Dominic ended up on the floor on top of each other again. Totally accidentally. Well, and then she rolled on top of him on purpose for a while, and then Rhea comes down and gets a big pop, and Liv runs away, and, Rhea's fucking yelling at Dominic, get back in the ring, because somehow the match has still been going after it's a minute later, but he gets in and Jey Uso spears him and splashes him and pins him, and Rhea walks off on him again. And then they go to the back later on where Priest is laughing at Dom because of his ineptitude. And Rhea walks in and says, I don't belong to anybody. I'm not yours. You're mine. You're mine? Does that mean she still likes him even though he's been dry humping Liv?
Yeah, she hasn't explained why.
And I thought she was walking off on him because we were building to the point where she gives him a big goddamn power bomb and fucking puts her foot on his chest, 1, 2, 3, and switches full-fledged babyface. But so I don't know, but they're drawing this out, aren't they? And then that was pretty much the end of Raw is Ripley. And I could say that Drew McIntyre is brilliant again. You know, would you like to talk any about that segment? That's the other thing of note.
Let's talk about Drew McIntyre.
Well, they've got the people roaring, wanting the match. If the heel, Drew McIntyre, says these people want Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk, oh, yay! And then Pierce said, well, how bad do you want the match? I want it bad. Well, then he says, I'll do it more than, I want it more than anything. And people are wanting it. And Drew said, please, Pierce, make it official. And Pierce says, I need one thing. And he calls the 2 referees in that Drew had done laid out, whatever. All you need to do is apologize to them for what you did. And Drew's like, why? And they go back and forth. And actually, Pierce is doing a tremendous job because you can tell they're letting him be more of a personality and more of himself rather than just the dry guy that was making a match or standing in the ring for a contract signing 2 years ago, right? Now he's firing up at him because he can cut promos because he was a wrestler, for fuck's sake, that many of these audience may not know. Anyway, so he wants him to apologize and he'll make the match. And Drew steps up to him and said, no. And then he has a meltdown, which was great, about how the referees have screwed me and you've screwed me and Punk screwed me. And it's a tantrum he's having. And then Pierce tells him, well, in that case, you're still suspended. And he pie faces the referees down and goes face to face with Adam Pearce. And then here comes Seth Franklin Rollins. And he hits the ring, gets a big fight. Drew bails out. But again, they don't even have to have the other half of the match in the building or on the show. The people are doing the work for it. They're chanting for Punk and this whole thing. And the longer they stretch it out, the longer they want it. But I love Drew McIntyre.
He's certainly been one of the highlights on the show. Do you think they're going to do something with Adam Pearce? He's getting more and more physical.
Well, no, I think it's like the deal at the press conference where he shot the elbow at Pearce and Pearce sold it, but he came back. It was more like you would see it at, as we talked about, the boxing press conference or maybe UFC press conference, whatever, rather than the traditional wrestling stuff where everybody can't help but go too far. And if you really did beat that fucking guy up, you'd probably be in jail because he's not a wrestler, whatever the case. I think they're letting Aldis in his own way. He's the more James Bondish, manipulator, but Pearce can cut a pretty good promo and stick his finger in your face as the voice of pretty much reason. Usually he's usually on the side of logic and normalcy. So they got different personalities, but I don't think that means they're going to get either one of them in the ring anytime in the next, 6 or 8 weeks or whatever. All right, we got to mention it before we move on. Did you watch the Eric Rowan Wyatt VHS?
in the background on mute. I was watching other things at that time, so no disrespect to him, but I don't know what he said or if it was any good or not.
Well, here are my notes. Really incredible delivery, emotional, extremely babyface. How will this or can this apply to a professional wrestling program? Question mark, question mark. It's good something, but I don't.
That's what Bray Wyatt was. All those Firefly Funhouse segments and everything. It was, in my eyes, bad wrestling TV. I used to say it looked like a show on Adult Swim. At times it was that. At times it's a good Rob Zombie. There are no good Rob Zombie horror films. I take that back.
Yeah, I was about to say.
At times it's a modern day horror film. At times it's a throwback to other horror films. At times it's the bad memories of being a VHS tape trader. I mean, it's all sorts of different things, but it's not wrestling. And everyone's been a good performer in it for anything other than this.
Well, then he put the sheep mask back on. And then later on, Gable goes out to the ring. He has solved the greatest wrestling mystery ever. Uncle Howdy is really Bo Dallas. And again, you know, because Gable's not with it or whatever the fuck. And he calls Bo Dallas out to solve all of their problems right now face to face. And out walks Bo Dallas with no music. And this is the first time he's been goddamn seen on this program in how long could it have been? Has it been 2 years?
Maybe longer than that. I can't remember the last time he wrestled on Raw. It may be much longer than that, other than the Uncle Howdy appearances.
Okay, but the point is, I just like to call out Bo Dallas. Well, here's this guy that we haven't technically seen on this show for 2. Has he been sitting and catering every Monday waiting for somebody to ask him to come out? Anyway, the Creed brothers. And boy, howdy, hopefully they've been working on overtime trying to perfect their craft if they're going to be involved in bigger things. And this, they attack Bo in the aisle. They're wearing suits and they beat Bo up and stand over him and Bo laughs. And then they beat Bo up more and he laughs again. And then they give him a big double team move and a big German suplex and he's still laughing. And then Gable squats over him and screams, "What are you laughing at?" And I believe, did he say, "Here you are"? Or "There you are"? Or something. Somebody was there. And the lights switched off and we get the blackout and the piano music. Do you have the piano music or did you plug the piano in today?
Oh, shoot. I had the organ going. Give me a minute.
Well, it's not worth it. We won't be here this long. The piano music and the fog and the heels are scared.
No, that's not it.
That's not it.
Whoa.
Oh, good Lord.
I'll keep looking.
Is that your burglar alarm?
I can't comment on that. I'll keep looking.
So the heels are scared and you see a light. And in the light you see silhouettes and there's a lantern. And they come towards the ring and they get on the apron. And Gable and the Creeds got their hands up like we're ready for a fight. And then Gable bails on them. And then the Creeds turn around and see these guys fucking, they bail out. And then Bo, who these, again, as 3 people are trying to push, they've just repeatedly been beating on him. And he's still laughing. And he gets up and they all pose in front of the lantern while he laughs. And it took much, much longer for them to all actually do that than it took me to tell you about it. So that's why, I mean, if they can't fucking, if they hurt them and they laugh, I mean, how are you going to win that? And now they're baby faces. What was it, 3-4 weeks ago? They committed mass murder at the gorilla position. And now they're baby faces. I do what? Anyway, and Braun beat the shit out of some people at the end. Sami Zayn and Ilya Kuryakin. I'm watching a weekly 60 to 90 minute dramatic program that's padded out to 3 hours with middling wrestling matches that are either predictable or that you don't really want to see to begin with. But I love the stars of the program. And I really can't wait to see who's going to be fucking who next. And metaphorically speaking, that is.
You know what I realized? I got lost in song over here. I agree with everything you said. Whatever that said may be. No,
You didn't hear what I said for about the last minute and a half because you were trying to find your goddamn Liberace key of fucking G and a half.
No, I was listening to you. It was just
that was Zachary over there. Woo.
Zachary, oh, very good.
You know, I have the Monster Mash album that Zachary did where he covered.
That's not the original, I was going to say.
Well, he covered the Bobby Boris Pickett classic, but in his own inimitable style. And also there were other tunes that were written just for this album, just for him, because he was on TV. It was the early 60s. There was Hurry, Berry, Baby. One of the refrains was him, I've got to dispose of the body. And there was, you've heard of the Bristol Stomp. He sang the Pistol Stomp. The kids in Bristol all carry a pistol when they do the Pistol Stomp and gunfire.
What do you think of some of those old gimmicks in rock and roll, like Screamin' Lord Sutch? He would like show up to his shows in a hearse that like was painted with his logo, and he would like come out of the back in a coffin.
Oh, well, of course, you're asking me like I'm going to hate gimmicks like that. And people coming out of any kind of a box are over. But
what about Screamin' Jay Hawkins? You ever see any footage of him?
I've heard the music. I've not searched out footage, to be quite honest. But I was going to tell you a hearse story. Not Hertz now, kids, not the rental car agency, but the meat wagon that's hauling you to your final repose. Well, I have a great picture of me and Brian Hildebrand in Cincinnati, Ohio at the Gardens one night when we both went to the Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Show before we were both photographers at that point in time. And Brian actually was wrestling on, the Independence in West Virginia even by then. But Dr. Creep brought his mobile mortuary down from Dayton. He was the evening horror movie host on, I think it was WDEF in Dayton. One of the there was like 2.5 TV stations in Dayton at that point. This was like 1981. And it was a hearse that had been converted to be like a limousine. And he even had a bar in the back, and the walls had like velvet, like it's lined like a coffin, and it had painted on the side, Dr. Creep's Mobile Mortuary. And he would do personal appearances in that thing, but because he was a wrestling fan too, and Dayton's only 45 miles, they came down that's when Brian was at college in Dayton. How about in college at Dayton? Or what? You get the picture.
Whatever happened to Brian's dad's videos?
I'm pretty sure that I would imagine that either Brian's wife, Pam, or potentially maybe even Tommy Noe might have got some of those. He had a bunch also, of the Smoky Mountain stuff, but good Lord, all the videos that, who knows if they still exist. Brian's dad would take a camera to independent shows when there hardly were any in the 80s and shoot stuff that I'm pretty sure that was the only camera present at the time. I don't know where all that stuff went. One night in Pittsburgh, and folks, I should say Brian Hildebrand, aka Mark Curtis, the referee in WCW Smoky Mountain and etc. in the 90s. But his father, Regis, was a cop in Pittsburgh. And every time that we went to Pittsburgh for Crockett, Brian and his dad would pick me up, and we'd go to the Eaton Park out there at the airport, and Brian loved the sticky buns. And then we'd go down to the show together, and then they'd bring me back to the hotel at night. We'd have dinner, whatever. And Bubba Rogers had just started. And, so I said, can we take Bubba back to the hotel also? Well, this was when it was early on. Remember, Bubba was fucking with Dusty, right? So he was on top right away. And he had fucking heat. You had to pull your car up a ramp out of the Civic Arena in Pittsburgh. And with a big crowd, the people were crowded around. The security was not what it could have been at the end of that ramp and out in the parking lot. And we come up and the people see that Bubba's in there because he's so fucking big. How can you miss him? And I start ducking down and people start throwing shit at Regis's car and crowding around. And I looked up and a second later, he had opened the door and pulled his goddamn service revolver out and held it up in the air. And it started barking police commands to get the fuck out of here. And people were climbing lamp posts and fucking diving over partitions and concrete walls to get away from this guy that they were used to the wrestlers coming out and being sitting ducks, but nobody ever got out of the goddamn car with a fucking gun and theoretically a badge. He didn't have time to show that, but where was I going with any of that?
I don't know where we were going. Lord knows where we've been. Jim, before we wrap up this segment, any thoughts, news breaking as we're recording? Another unfortunate passing to report. At the age of 94, Bob Newhart has passed away.
Oh, no! Yeah. And see, there's the thing. If you'd have said, I would have said Bob Newhart would be 100. Whereas I was shocked at, who the fuck was I shocked at was 80? Who just died? We were talking about something else. Martin Mull, God damn it.
He was only 14 years Bob Newhart's junior. That's surprising.
Well, but Martin Mull was also 17 years older than me, which I found surprising. But I don't find it surprising that Bob Newhart would be 30, what was he, 94, would be 32 years or whatever older than me because he's been around for so fucking long. So it's all relative. But were you a fan of his comedy, the albums, or the later television shows? Well, no, the television. See, I saw the Bob Newhart show, the first one, not the one in Vermont with the Inn, but the psychiatrist in Chicago. That was regular viewing, first run when I was able to watch television in my younger days. So no, I was a big fan of, and also I had a thing for. What was his secretary's name? God damn it. Remember the redhead secretary?
Yeah,
she was quite sassy.
What'd you think of the ending of the second show?
I thought it was clever. It was clever. I don't want to see it on a wrestling program, but I'll take it from now. No, I never watched the second Bob Newhart show with the Inn in Vermont. Because that's when I was on the road and I wasn't watching any primetime television. Then I started catching it in reruns later on. And I grew to like that one probably, maybe, better than the original just because of Larry and Daryl and all of they had a wider cast of knuckleheads.
He had the first massive comedy record ever.
The button-down mind of Bob Newhart.
Yeah, that was a game changer.
And he would do the one-sided telephone conversations on either the Tonight Show or whatever, the same thing as he did in his office as a psychiatrist on the Newhart show. And that was they would play these on some radio stations. His spoken word, one-sided telephone conversation records they would play on the radio. and you would be able to figure out from what he said what the conversation was, what was going on, and why it was funny. Well, that's terrible. Not only 94 in the prime of his life.
Well, we send our sympathies out to the friends and fans of Bob Newhart.
And especially to Suzanne Plachette. But hey, Suzanne, you know, if you're single now, Brian, what's the email she could write in for my phone number?
There's no email to write in, and hopefully she's not listening, or any of her representatives. But Jim, if they were and they heard this show, their head might spin. They may need some help with getting to sleep or just overall aches and pains, and we know where you could send them.
Well, I'll tell you exactly where you can send them, Brian. You can send them down the road to CB Distillery, just right down there, the last house on the right. And that's where you go in to get the real good stuff it's pure, effective, high quality, clean ingredients, no fluff, no fillers. Ladies and gentlemen, ain't no duds in this bowl of popcorn. There ain't no rotten apples in this barrel. It's all pure, effective CBD solutions designed to help support your health and well-being, your mood, your mannerisms, your emotional and mental stability and ability to deal with modern-day stresses and aggravations that might come your way. And as a matter of fact, Brian, do you know they have done 2 non-clinical surveys? 81% of customers experienced even more calm. 80% said CBD helped with pain after physical activity. 90% said they slept better with CBD. And 1% said that they thought that they were in the chocolate fountain at the Waldorf Astoria brunch. But that may be an outlier.
That may be in the margin of error. I'm not sure about that 1%.
And these are 2 non-clinical surveys also. They didn't go to the clinics. That's where all the fucking sick people go. That'll skew your average right there to the negative. No, they went at non-clinical. They went out in the street. Matter of fact, I think they were canvassing neighborhoods in San Bernardino. And the streets where you get the real people's opinion. They talk to the backbone of America. And if they couldn't get to the backbone, they at least talk to the tailbone. And folks, right now, if you struggle with a health concern and you haven't found relief and you'd like to just know one way or another, just Lord, take me and get it over with, or help me find some kind of peace. Well, 2 million customers have gone to CB Distillery and they're alive to tell the tale. They are the source to trust over at the CB Distillery. And if you want 20% off right now to get you started, go to cbdistillery.com and use the code JCE for 20% off whatever fine products you may be purchasing from their online store there, cbdistillery.com. The promo code is JCE, 20% off. That's like 20% off peace of mind, 20% off a good night's sleep. It's cheaper than ever. It's within your reach, within your grasp. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you, take advantage of this incredible opportunity. Down this stuff and go on a magic carpet ride with Steppenwolf.
With CB Distillery, no magic carpet supplied, but CB Distillery one more time.
Well, no, you got to bring your own carpet.
What's that promo code, Jim?
cbdistillery.com. Use the promo code JCE, 20% off. Bring your own carpet. Take the CBD, lay down on the carpet, leave your window open, and hope for the best.
With CB Distillery. Oh, that sounds awful. That's right, CB Distillery. But Jim, before we move on to Dynamite, an interesting episode. I can't speak this week. This week,
it was a very, very interesting episode of the show.
It was a very interesting episode of AEW Dynamite. We'll get to that in a little bit, but let's get some questions from the listeners here, Jim. This one sent via the Cult of Cornette, the official Cult of Cornette Facebook group, by Ben Orwig. Can Cody ever successfully turn heel in the WWE?
Oh, short answer, yes. Longer answer, there would be no reason to even think about that for, I would assume, the next couple of years, the way things are going. But then, yeah, I can't remember how old Cody is, but he's in his 30s. If you're saying ever as
it's late 30s, by the way.
Well, late 30s, but okay. But then when he gets older and, and then he doesn't want to step aside or whatever. The point is, if he wants to wrestle, on even a part-time basis for the next 10 years, my God, at some point, there would probably be a great spot for him to turn heel and have a good run like that for a while. I'm trying to think in the modern era of the WWE, who has not, besides Cena, and now finally even The Rock did, right? And The Rock was a heel before. But the point is, everybody at some point, you need to freshen up or get a change of direction or attitude or whatever. So I think, if he was going to hang it up in a couple of years, I'd say, well, fuck, no, you'd never even try. But there's plenty of time for something like that to happen. But there's no reason to force it either.
It was clear that if he had stayed with AEW, and that probably a little bit before the end of his run in AEW, if he had turned heel, things may have been a little different. And it almost seemed like the fans were demanding it. And it felt like he would be more natural in that role, because you can clearly see now, seeing how he is in WWE, how much frustration he had performing towards the end in AEW.
Yeah.
You can go watch and you can just see it on his face.
It was like, this great stage actor suddenly is in, dinner theater, and it just, started to get burnt on the whole goddamn deal.
But what do you think of that looking back now, knowing where we are today, him in WWE, and knowing how few WWE fans by and large know what AEW even is? We've seen based on the reactions to things. But the decision to almost stubbornly stay babyface in AEW, and looking at that decision today here in 2024.
Well, because also remember early on, he lost a stipulation where he could never challenge for or never be or whatever the AEW World Champion. And then he got one of the secondary belts. But I mean, I think he's been very smart in that, yes, he wanted to be part of starting a new wrestling company. And if it had taken off and he was obviously doing his best trying to perform for him, he'd dive off a cage and set himself on fire and did some other shit. But he wasn't going to kill his career on the main stage or ruin the ace he had in the hole by finishing the story and by going back and forth, babyface, heel, becoming one of these wishy-washy fucking guys. He was being Cody. And so for the benefit of the part of the audience that the WWE audience that knows who AEW is, he never really threw a wet blanket or cold water on his basic thing that he took to the WWE. They just were able to make it happen and make it more bigger, right? That had to be why he never won a world title, because he didn't want to spoil saying, I've always wanted to win the world title for my daddy. And he didn't switch heel because it wasn't Cody, the Cody that he was wanting to present. So he was leaving it open, is what I'm saying.
And remember the confusion early on, because he was clearly a babyface, clearly wanting to be a babyface, and early on, especially in the stuff with Jericho and then MJF, he was the babyface. Brandy at the same time was portraying a heel with her. Then the Nightmare Collective is what they were. Whatever happened to Mel?
They shaved her head and bid her future endeavors good luck in her future endeavors, I should say. Maybe Mel is now Brandy's personal assistant.
I don't know. We will have to see what we can find out about that, but that is that question. Jim, another question sent via the Facebook group, the official Cult of Cornette, from Don Stanley Hallbrooks III.
Oh, come on now.
You guys talked about Tommy Rich in a recent episode. Would or could he have been a big national star if he had not had his issues? I saw him at a show in my hometown in the 90s. He was drunk and throwing out inappropriate comments in his promo. It was wild. So what do you think? Because again, with Tommy Rich, a lot of it's about timing and place, and then you get to him and his personal issues or traffic issues or all sorts of issues. Could he have been a bigger star nationally? Did he get as far as he could go nationally? What are your thoughts on this issue overall?
Well, remember, he was a big star nationally. For the nationally that existed at the time in the early days of TBS, the Superstation, he was the most popular babyface in wrestling in the country overall. Now, that, you know, some of that is because, yes, you know, the territories were local and regional television, so they had a foot up in that more people were able to see the Georgia program. But I would say once Bruno retired, for that, 1979, 80, 81-ish, that era when Tommy Rich was in Georgia, he was the most popular babyface in the country. And that's why Barnett was able to get him the belt for that 5 days or whatever, just to give the people something to reward their faith in this fucking kid. He had to go all the way.
But if I could stop you right there, specific to him becoming a big national star, and agree with you. You know, he was on TBS when it went national. Terry Funk, I think, was one of the things he cited when he knew it was time to sell the Amarillo territory.
Yeah.
When a fan came up to him and said, "When are you guys going to book Tommy Rich?" And he's like, "What? How do you know about Tommy?"
Yeah.
And it's because it was on cable already. But you said kid. Do you think the fact that after a while he didn't necessarily look like a kid anymore?
Well, but that's what I was going to say. So the question, Tommy Rich, the young, I want to say because remember, I saw like his fourth fucking match live. His father was friends with the Jarretts, and he was from Hendersonville, Tennessee, and he was a big kid, and he had a personality. But he was, again, talk about Jimmy Kent earlier in the show, talk about him being country. Tommy Rich was as country as it got. And that accent was legitimate and not put on. And, you know, so the point is, he would have worked as a babyface in any of the territories. He started in 1975. Any of the territories in the 70s and the early 80s, he would have worked as a babyface because he was an underdog. Even though he was a good-sized kid, he knew how to bleed and sell. And he had fire in his comebacks. And he worked most specifically in Tennessee, Georgia, that part of the country, because he sounds just like us. And that was a necessity in a territory babyface. But again, because the people in Texas and the people in, the Midwest and wherever, they liked him on Georgia TV because he was a country boy. And the Waylon and Willie thing was hot, whatever. So that didn't take away from him at that time period either. You know, the Outlaws were all the rage in terms of country music. He would have worked in Florida tremendously had he ever even had time to go there. But the problem was, once that Vince established that you had to look like Mr. Universe to be a wrestler, and the Road Warriors and Hulk Hogan and Luger and all of that became in vogue in all the companies, that doomed Tommy. Because he didn't have a body and wasn't going to get a body. You couldn't make him. If he'd have shot every kind of monkey hormone. He was like Bobby Eaton. He wasn't going to have a fucking body, plus he didn't take care of himself, so he had a worse body. And then that's why he was, unfortunately, by the late 80s, he had that last run with WCW, which they didn't really use him.
And that was the best shape he had been in years when he showed up in 89 again.
Yeah, and there you go. That's the best shape he'd been in years, and he was still in that shape compared to what everybody else looked like. There's Brian Pillman, right? So he couldn't be a babyface, so he's a heel. He was a great heel, but he was a great old Tennessee-style heel. That shit works in the main event, but you can't really just do that shit that you need to do in the second or third match and pull out gimmicks and bleed and blah, blah, blah. So that's why, his career, he was a shooting star, a comet across the sky, but it flamed out early because the time passed and the places passed to go and to fit what he did.
You said something interesting before. Let's talk a little bit more about it. If we're looking at the biggest babyface in the business, the biggest babyface star in the business, however you want to quantify it, from let's say 78 to 84, you said Tommy either is or certainly in the conversation for being the top babyface for what, 79, 80, 81?
Somewhere in that, one of those years, you've got, you've also got Bruno until he retired in what, 80? You can't top Bruno, but, in the rarefied air of 2 or 3.
But again, Bruno wasn't a full-time wrestler until he did the Zbyszko program. All of a sudden he was working more matches, but he was kind of semi-retired already. I know it was a different thing by 83, but Backlund had a few years there with wild popularity in WWF. Some of those shows were on WOR Channel 9. That's syndicated. Or not syndicated, but that was on satellite.
Right.
So, you have to think he's in the argument. The Von Erichs, when would you put them in the argument? Would it be 83? Would it be before then?
They were very popular to a modest audience. And then when the Freebirds thing blew up and they started selling out everywhere, then 83, 84, yeah, they're definitely... And probably the only thing that keeps them as a group, they blow everybody else away. There weren't 3 baby faces in the same territory that individually had that level of popularity anywhere. Probably if there had only been 1 or 2 of them, each one of them would have been even exponentially more popular.
Here's the question. Who's the biggest baby face of 83? Jimmy Snuka? The Von Erichs, and you could pick any one of the 3. But let's just use them as an entity because that's really what we think of them like. Or Hulk Hogan. AWA and New Japan. Jimmy Snuka, that was the year where Backlund started getting booed. And Jimmy Snuka was the most popular guy in the company. If he hadn't murdered his girlfriend and been a complete train wreck, who knows what the future would have been, even though he was already in his 40s. And the Von Erichs, 83... they're on the cover of every wrestling magazine. That's the hottest year ever for Dallas. What do you think?
I don't know if you can separate it to discern one over the other or other two because of the reasons you just said. The Hogan was bigger in more places, got a lot of publicity and drew big money for Vern, which by the mathematics of Vern's territory having bigger towns, they were drawing more money than Dallas, but at the same time, nobody was drawing more money in one fucking market than the Von Erichs, and they did have the syndicated TV, so they were still popular. And then Snuka was in the Northeast where the biggest buildings were, and they were doing that kind of business regularly, but he wasn't as widespread as Hogan was at that. So it's apples, oranges, and rutabagas.
Yeah, and Flair was a great babyface at that point in Mid-Atlantic, but he was a heel everywhere else, so you can't really consider him for the biggest national babyface. JYD, biggest babyface in Mid-South, occasional appearances in other places, but not really at the national level of guys who were seen regularly all over the place.
He had been as hot in Mid-South in maybe, 81-ish as the Von Erichs were in Dallas in 83. So that had already kind of started dovetailing.
Who was the hottest babyface in Crockett Promotions in 85, 86? Dusty Rhodes or the Rock and Roll Express?
In 85, probably Dusty. In 86, the Rock and Roll Express.
All right. Well, that was a nice little detour there.
I don't, for just one single year in a place, I don't know if any baby faces have ever been as fucking ravingly over as the Rock and Roll Express in the Carolinas in 1986.
You know, one of the members of the Cult of Cornette Facebook group earlier today posted the poster image of the upcoming Netflix series on Dump Matsumoto. Out of nowhere, this was announced. No one knew about this.
Really? I was interviewed for that one a long time ago. I thought I told you about it.
Well, they asked, does anyone know anything about her? And I said, watch some of those matches with her and Chigasa Nagayo from the 80s because of the emotion. You'll never see or hear fans like that again, where it's all female screaming, living and dying with the babyface.
I remember those tapes again. They had a lot of great wrestling in Japan, just like we did here, and they fucked it all up there too.
You know what the worst thing was about All Japan Women? Whenever you tried to get a tape of one of their shows or one of the matches that you read a rave review about in the Observer or something, because they had like a slick, I don't know how to describe it. The canvas was like very slick looking.
Yes.
As soon as you got anything that was like a generation away from master, it just looked like a giant wet canvas. And it was just awful to watch those if you had anything that was not perfect quality.
And I'll tell you what, I've been on a few of those in this country, and I hate those fucking things. They are slicker than cum on a gold tooth.
Jim, several listeners have sent in questions. One of them even attached a photo of you from a few years back with the subject of the question: whatever happened with the 1929 Cadillac LaSalle?
That project has been put on hold until my retirement, which the Cult of Cornette will not allow to happen. And it is currently in storage it's at Iron Mountain up there in the Catskills, the same facility that the WWE stores their video library in, deep down under the mountain in the controlled environment, awaiting further restoration.
All right, the next question was sent in by Kyle Vaughn via the official Cult of Cornette Facebook group.
Is he related to Theo?
No, it's Vaughn.
Oh, you don't know how to spell it, huh?
More Stevie Ray than Theo here.
Oh, so he's related to Stevie Ray.
Well, let's talk about a different Vaughn. Was Kevin Von Erich actually considered to win the NWA title like it was depicted in the Iron Claw? And if Kerry didn't die in 1993 and still left the WWF, would Jim have brought him into Smoky Mountain Wrestling?
Well, wildly different questions. Let's go with, I don't want to be disrespectful to Kevin. He was a fucking fantastic athlete, but I don't remember ever hearing that there was any serious consideration whatsoever making Kevin Von Erich the NWA World Champion. What I always heard was that David was the most well-rounded of the brothers, that he didn't have Kerry's body, and he wasn't the just freak athlete that Kevin was, but he was the best worker, he had the best promo, and he had, it's sort of like when Bullet Bob had all those sons, each one of them got a part, but Brad was the most well-rounded. But Road Dogg was the best promo. Steve was probably the best athlete. Scott was the best wrestling mind. But Brad kind of got a little bit of everything, right? So I think that basically the conversation was around David being and also remember, at that point in time, they had no reason to believe that the NWA was going to be controlled in a few years by Jim Crockett and Vince was going to go on this national expansion and blah, blah, blah. So they were lining up potential NWA world champions for the next 10 years. And David was young enough that when regardless of whether Flair or DiBiase or Dusty Rhodes was in the conversation more immediately at that point in time, David was a guy that they said, well, yeah, we're going to do that with him when it's time. Time never came because times changed. Well, even if David had been around, I don't think that he would have got his turn yet before it all went sideways. But no, to answer your question, in the Iron Claw, no, they weren't going to there was a lot of that stuff in the Iron Claw they weren't going to really do.
You don't think they would have given David a short run? It would have been David against Flair at Texas Stadium? Because they had Texas Stadium booked before David died.
Did they?
I believe they were planning on a Texas Stadium show.
Well, what was going to be the fucking main event?
Well, that's the question.
David versus Flair. Would they have switched the belt? Because here's the thing, the Freedom Hall, I started to say, the reunion arena shows were topping out at 20,000 people, give or take, right? And it's not like they were turning away people in droves, and not say it's not an accomplishment, but they had no reason to believe that even if they built even if they had Fritz versus Flair, that they were going to do almost double a sellout at Reunion Arena. So they'd run Texas Stadium before with Fritz and Dory at one point, did 20-something thousand people.
Fritz and Terry, too.
Fritz and Terry. I don't even know if they did 20-something thousand, but they... So the thing is, it wasn't like...
Remember the Fritz retirement show at Texas Stadium? I believe the crowd was disappointing.
6,000 or so, because Fritz retired about 2 or 3 years after he should have. The moment had passed. And the territory, the talent wasn't strong, et cetera, et cetera. But point being, even if they were having a stadium show, Crockett was having stadium shows, they could have a stadium, if people were having stadium shows, they would not have switched the belt and put it on David when their plans were already involving Flair and Dusty, et cetera, just because they had a show in a stadium in Dallas. They would have given him an out or whatever. But they knew because of the circumstances where now it was Kerry and Flair in memory of David, and we're going to have fucking 40,000 people. It would have shit all over a major NWA territory's business horribly if those people had gone home unhappy. That's how they were able to make that case.
Remember, too, this is the period of time where Vince McMahon's making a push to do something with Fritz. Either buy them. Fritz's side has always said merge with them.
Yeah.
I would think it was more buy them.
Get the TV and get Kerry.
Get the TV and get Kerry. Kevin, too. Kevin was in great shape.
Well, yeah, but and again, Kevin was a better worker than Kerry. Kerry just had the body, but that's what Vince McMahon was looking at, was Kerry, in that physique. He's a comic book character. The Texas Tornado.
And what about the Texas Tornado coming to Smoky Mountain in 93 if things had happened differently? And, well, I think if he had lived, he was going to jail. I think that's one of the reasons why he made the decision he made.
But let's say that he didn't have a spot in wrestling at the moment and his personal life was fine and his, injury had not happened and et cetera. No, probably not. And not, again, to be disrespectful to Kerry, because he lived in Dallas, Texas. He's been a major name in the wrestling business. He would want some degree of a guarantee. Plus, he's not going to move to Knoxville or even anywhere in Tennessee. So I would have to fly him back and forth for, okay, maybe Knoxville and my big towns would have been worth it. But what about when there's a weekend where we're just up in Eastern Kentucky? and I could make money potentially with the guys that live there or that can drive up. But if I'm buying plane tickets and guaranteeing carry on, no, that did not make sense. That wouldn't have been something that I would have checked into to bring him in for a big event like the Night of Legends or Super Bowl of Wrestling. Once again, with his personal life being fine and him not being injured or whatever, that, I wouldn't have been against that, but it would have had been something special.
Well, Jim, let's get one more question here before we go to Dynamite. This one, once again, from the official Cult of Cornette Facebook group, sent by Brandon Hitchcock. I was talking to...
Oh, come on. That's got to be made up.
I was talking to someone the other day.
No, what he's done is, he listens to the program all the time. He knows we talk about Brandon Thurston Howell III. And he knows that Heyman looks like Hitchcock, so he's made that up. It's going to be a rib question.
What if it's the son of John Hitchcock?
No, he didn't have any kids. He had a dog.
All right, well, let's get back to the question here. I was talking to someone the other day about wrestlers from Kentucky, and they was telling me of a wrestler from fairly local named Nelson Royal.
What?
Well, I'll admit I'd never heard of him. They was telling me he invented the Battle Royal match. While I find that the last name and the name of coincidence, is there anything to that? Who did invent the Battle Royal, if not him? So, Jim, can you talk a little bit about Nelson Royal of Kentucky and if he indeed invented the Battle Royal?
Well, there's a few things wrong with that. What is this guy's name? Brandon
Hitchcock.
Brandon Hitchcock. Nelson Royal was not from Kentucky. Nelson Royal spent much of his life in Mooresville, North Carolina. I can't remember when he first got into business in the 60s. He was an English lord, right? But he was not English. He's not from Kentucky, and he did not invent the Battle Royal. He invented the goddamn, what did Dusty call it? The boot, the bunkhouse
Stampede.
The bunkhouse stampede. Because Nelson Royal, after he retired from full-time wrestling, and actually before he retired, he had opened a Western store. He liked to ride horses, and he had the cowboy boots and blah, blah, blah. And at one point he was, from Texas. But he opened up a Western store in North Carolina. And when Dusty wanted to do the bunkhouse stampede and award the big bronze boot to the Bull of the Woods, baby, that's where they had Nelson out by the campfire on a tape on television talking about how in the old days in the Cowboys, the bunkhouse, when they got in a big brawl or whatever, the toughest man won. And it was very folksy and westerny, and Dusty liked shit like that. So Nelson didn't invent it, Dusty did, but Nelson pitched it, but it was the bunkhouse stampede battle royals rather than just, nobody knows who invented the first ever battle royal. Brian, is that pretty safe to say at this point?
Yeah, I think so.
And then we found out through like Scott Teal's research into Amarillo. And, so they used to have back in the 1920s when there was only like 2 or 4 professional wrestlers on a card or in a town, they would let amateurs, even young black kids, they would give them boxing gloves and put them in the ring for a shoot until only one was left and call that a battle royal. And this was a thing that, even with kids, was a thing that was done in some places. So I don't even know if it was applied in a wrestling context first or whether it was some kind of boxing thing that was a battle royal. They did strange things back in those days, Brian.
I remember in early 88, because I heard about it when I became a fan, local fans were still talking about it at the Nassau Coliseum. They did, WWF did, the Bunkhouse Brawl. And Jim Duggan came out in a New York Islanders jersey. People were still talking about that a few years later. Got a big pop. It was years later, too, and I found out, oh, they did that because Dusty was coming with the Bunkhouse Stampede. They created their own bunkhouse match.
Yes.
And put it in the same building.
And that's where, that was the Bunkhouse Stampede was what, January 1988 and on pay-per-view in Nassau. And
That's right.
God, that was a rotten show. And like the Midnight were in singles matches underneath, and there's only 5 matches on the card because the bunkhouse thing was going to take a while. And is that the one where they printed the wrong start date on some of the tickets?
I'm not sure. I seem to remember you saying something about that, but I don't remember.
I think it is. If it is, it's either that one or the one before, but I think it was that one. And a bunch of people, because it was like fucking 5 o'clock, right? The start time for the pay-per-view. Because of some bullshit with Vince again. And some of the people were wandering in when the last match was going on. They just got there. So it was a whole fucking fiasco. Fuck the Bunkhouse Stampede.
Well, what a wonderful transition there. Speaking of fiascos, ladies and gentlemen, let's travel through time and review AEW Dynamite. All right, we're in the future. It was brief.
That was a quick trip this time.
You know, sometimes people say, Brian, you can't play music. Because it's time travel, you idiots.
Yes.
It's not the sound of a melodious song. It's the sound of either the ship going through the air or the actual air as the ship's going through it. It's time travel.
Or then when we get out of the air in the space-time continuum, we are creating a warp speed effect with the light and shenanigan quotient.
That's right.
Everybody knows that's been to 6th grade.
And on the topic of time travel, while we were in orbit, the mothership touched down in Kentucky. We have some news, a follow-up on a previous segment. Travis Heckel, again from Kentucky, heard what we were talking about. And he sent me here a biography of Nelson Royal from the website Nelson Royal's Work and Western Wear, Boots and Saddlery.
Boy, I told you he had a Western store, but I don't know if anybody will ever go to that website based on the fact that how would you goddamn remember it?
Well, About Nelson Royal by Mike Mooneyham.
Mike Mooneyham in the Charleston Post and Courier.
And if I scroll down a little bit here, in this biography, this is a long biography. Hold on, I'm trying to find the section that I was looking for.
Well, Nelson, he lived a long, full, fruitful life.
Here we go. Nelson Combs, he later added the name Royal, was born in Wheelwright, Kentucky, July 25th, 1931.
Holy shit.
Started wrestling at the age of 17 under the watchful eye of Indian star Don Eagle. Wow. So there you go.
I had no idea, and he never relayed that information to me.
Where's Wheelwright, Kentucky?
I don't have any goddamn idea, but I bet you it's somewhere in eastern Kentucky. Hold on one second. Let me just reach around here to the cabinet.
Is it near Mudlick, Kentucky?
It might be near, hold on here one second. No, that's Whitwell. Wait a minute. Let me get, I'm getting back here to, we got Randy McNally out here. Wheelwright, Kentucky is what you're saying to me. Or it could be in western Kentucky, down around the Paducah area. We don't know, but hold on. Kentucky, boy, they make this print small these days. Can you?
These days? When did you get this?
Well, I've got the atlas over the microphone, so you can't. I've only had this 10 or 15 years. Wait a minute.
These days.
Now, you made me take my eye off the ball.
Or the atlas.
Wheelwright. There's 1,025 people in it right now. K18.
As of 10 to 15 years ago.
Well, right now as this was printed. So, what did I just say? 15?
Maybe we should get back in the spaceship, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe we should get back in the
hold on.
spaceship.
My first impression was correct. I believe it's over in eastern Kentucky, in the hills.
Near anything that anyone would know? How far from Barberville, for instance?
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. It's very small. I'm still trying to find the exact. No, 18, not 15. Now, oh, my God. Oh, boy, that Wheelwright. That's even further. It's almost to Virginia. It is about
Sounds like a Groucho Marx character.
20 miles to the southwest of Pikeville.
Oh.
It's right up above Fleming Neon, which we used to run in Smoky Mountain. Of course, we ran Pikeville. It's not far from Hazard.
So if you were a wrestling
down
fan
the road
living
from
there,
Betsy Lane, Kentucky.
So if you were a wrestling fan living there, you would have been able to watch Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and you would have gone to Pikeville for the Bluegrass Brawl, potentially?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. You would only had to hop over 2 or 3 mountains to get there. Yeah, that's in 1931, actually, my mother was born in 1933, and she wasn't as far over at Eastern Kentucky. She was down about 15 or 20 miles to the east of Corbin, but it's in the general area. I can't imagine. He probably didn't see a paved road for the first 10 years of his life.
Hey, crazy question. His last name is Combs. Any relation to the Combs family? Are they from Kentucky or are they from Tennessee?
What Combs family do you know of? I'll tell you.
Cora Combs, Debbie Combs?
Oh, God damn it. That's not their real fucking name.
Oh, okay. I don't know what their name is.
No, her real name her last name is Polish, and I can't pronounce or spell it.
Did they take their name? Did they take the name Combs from?
Well, the thing is, there is a Combs, Kentucky, in Eastern Kentucky, and a former governor of the state of Kentucky was Bert T. Combs, and the Combses are known in that region of the country. There may have been a few moonshiners under that name also back in the day. I'm not casting any aspersions. Is he dead? Bert Combs, he'll sue me if he's not dead. How did we get started? Oh, Nelson Royal. He's from Kentucky.
Time travel. Yeah, Nelson Royal.
But he still didn't invent the battle royal.
No, I don't think anyone could believe that.
No, well, because they shouldn't, because he didn't. But he is from Kentucky, so we apologize for the error.
Well, we are now here in the future, Jim. There are a few things to talk about. AEW Dynamite. We have to talk about that. An interesting edition this week. Anything you want to say, because the listeners are somewhat demanding it. Hulk Hogan made an appearance and cut a promo at the Republican National Convention last night as we are recording. Did you see it? Any thoughts on it?
Well, and see, you lead me to one thing. I was going to be in a positive mood, and then you jerk the rug out from under me. We go back to this dipshit. You know, we have made fun of Hulk Hogan, and rightfully so, for the big, giant, whopping bullshit lies that he tells every time he's in front of 3 people or more. And it's funny because it's easily disprovable bullshit. You can look it up in any number of sources. It's verifiable things that he's just pulling out of his ass and just lying about. And you can easily take it apart if you have any time or inclination to do so. And it's funny because it's Hulk Hogan. But now, I mean, I've heard of the Friars Club, but they've started the Liars Club. Liars, thieves, assholes, and criminals. And grifters. They all got together, and Hulk Hogan was invited to speak at one of our country's national political conventions because they are the party of the stupid, gullible, dullard sucker that is perfect for Hulk Hogan's bullshit that doesn't laugh at him anymore. And they ate it up.
Brother.
In the wrestling business, we've been listening to it for 40 years. And it was honestly, in the 80s, it was for kids and the real marks, the Vince and Hulk's opinion of what a pro wrestling superstar should be, which is why in many of the territories they got laughed out for a while because it was so fucking over the top bullshit, but it worked for the general populace. And now and you've got, I mean, we know that Vince and Trump are bosom buddies, and Dana White is swinging off fucking the Mango Mussolini's fucking tiny mushroom-headed penis. Just every chance he gets, he's got his lips locked around the fucking man. And now Hulk Hogan wants to get in on it. And the only person that tells more lies than Hulk Hogan does is the pig-faced piece of shit that they are trying to reinstall in the White House. But he's not funny. It's not funny. Because Hulk Hogan's lying about being a bassist for Metallica or slamming a 700-pound giant. You can laugh. Because it's bullshit, but it's not important bullshit. But you cannot laugh at Trump's bullshit because it is earth-endangering bullshit. These pod people that have been taken over by this space virus are supporting him to be the most powerful man in the world again after he's already installed a bunch of judges and other criminal malcontents and sycophants in important places and stacked the Supreme Court to where the country will suffer for the next 50 years already. And he will be accountable for nothing, and there will be no way to stop him. And that is why it's not funny when a funny liar like Hulk Hogan endorses this criminal psychopathic fucking liar that's a clear and present danger to our country and all of us individually. And there's two kinds of people out there doing this. The genetically ignorant that actually really believe that this fucking guy, for any myriad of reasons that have been shown on audio and video and are documentable and verifiable, shouldn't be in charge of anything but his own prison cell. But they think that he should, and they believe this with their hearts. That's why they are genetically ignorant. There is something wrong with them from the start that led them to this point. But willfully ignorant is the people like Hulk Hogan and other who want to, and anybody who capitalizes on their opportunity to help a criminal into a position that is a problem for all of us just because they think they'll profit from it, because they'll be better off. The guy likes us. Trump's a wrestling mark, so they're Hulk Hogan, a fucking grifter. He'll be Secretary of State, brother. And he can talk about how he's been hanging and banging with Donnie Bay or whatever the fuck. That's all he cares about, himself. These narcissists and grifters are going to latch on Kid Rock. I mean, it's like they emptied every trailer park in Mississippi to put this fucking display on. They're all going to latch onto this fucking asshole because they think they will profit and fuck everybody else in the world and fuck the country. What about me? And we all know that's what Hulk Hogan is, but now it's dangerous. So it's not funny with him anymore. It's fucking dangerous. Just like it's dangerous for anybody else to normalize this fucking cretin or in any way attempt to enable these people to shovel him down our throats and into the White House again. And I'm sorry that some 20-year-old pimply-faced dipshit has somehow made the most wretched human scum that has ever walked the face of our planet a sympathetic hero. But we've still got to live in the real world. And he is unwell, unfit, unqualified, and unacceptable to normal humans. So and for people who think that it's political difference, Cornette will cast aside friendships for political differences. Would it be a political difference that you would end a friendship over if a friend of yours suddenly started fucking knocking old women over the head in the street, stealing their purse, fucking breaking into homes, stealing people's belongings, Would you support that friend? Because it's just a moral difference that we have. No, fuck you. I'm sorry. I do not support space spores taking over people's minds, turning them into zombies that will follow this fucking cum-gargling cretin. Fucking idiots. Why did you start me off with this today?
A lot of the listeners were asking about the Hulk Hogan promo at the
Well,
RNC.
a lot of the listeners heard about it. He's out there doing his shit, and the fucking gullible marks that haven't seen it because they're not in the wrestling bubble, they're eating it up like they were 40 years ago because they're gullible marks, or they wouldn't fucking be there at the Republican National Convention, aka the run-through for the next fucking American Reich. I mean, they even tried to make the stage look like Nazi Germany.
What do you mean?
Except Hitler didn't. Well, with all the flags and the displays, we're going to deport. They think they're going to deport 15 or 20 million people. And then the experts the next day said, yeah, it would take 20 years and hundreds of billions of dollars. And of course, many of them probably wouldn't want to go and leave behind their wives and children. Fucking morons. And the only thing that Hitler didn't have was Eva Braun fingering herself under her skirt on the screen behind him. Did you see that clip?
No, I did not. I don't even know what you're talking about. There's a clip of Eva Braun fingering herself?
No. She was
the fuck
a
are you
lady.
watching?
She was a lady. She didn't do that. They didn't have that there in Nazi Germany, but we got it here in America, in addition to this other parade of genetic misfits living downstream from the nuclear plant, making us all look like goddamn morons to the world. They got a big shot of President Pig Shit, and on the video screen behind him, some way or another, they had the Kimberly Guilfoyle, the one that's gone ape shit with the plastic surgery, and her face looks like it's melting. She's got her hand under her skirt in her crotch. Look it up on Twitter right now. If I'm lying, I'm flying. My feet ain't left the ground. She is. People were talking about, has she got the critters from, what is it, Don Jr. that she's engaged in a business fucking relationship with?
I'm Googling what you talked about. I'm trying to find it. But yeah, she's the fiance of Donald Trump Jr., I believe.
Yeah, well, apparently he's got the cooties. Because she was, if it wasn't pleasuring herself, it was attending to goddamn some type of activity going on down there.
What exactly am I looking up? Kimberly Guilfoyle crotch? What do you?
That'll probably work. From what I saw, I would think a lot of people are looking that up. Can you find it?
Well, the first thing that came up was, again, I'm just going to say what came up from 2018. This came up on a Google search of Kimberly Guilfoyle crotch. From SF Gate, Kimberly Guilfoyle's Fox exit tied to penis pics. I don't know where it goes from there, but apparently she had to leave the Fox broadcast system or whatever because of penis pics, but it doesn't sound like that has anything to do with an itchy crotch.
Do you think that's what she was doing? She was tucking herself?
Oh, come on. Will you stop it?
Well, how's she sending penis pictures unless she's got a penis?
That wasn't what I said. You need to behave.
What? Well, anyway, are you going to find this?
I can't find it. I Googled it in RNC crotch. I'm trying every fucking kind of search that I don't want on my computer here.
I believe I've retweeted it earlier.
Oh, you
I
did?
think I did. Either that, maybe I might not have retweeted it because it had his face in it, but I saw it on Twitter. I laughed at it.
Why wouldn't you have led with that? Hold on.
Well, maybe I don't know. Now you've got me questioning. I'm just going to search, what the fuck would that be? How do you spell a Guilfoyle?
Oh no, this is just a different thing you posted of her, I guess. GUI.
Wait, I think I got it. Okay, here it is. I'm about to retweet it right there. Boom. Now you'll see it.
Go to your page. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Video here.
she's gripping it too. It's like she's got a fucking bowling ball grip up in there.
Oh.
Yes, the video content is there, and the tweet says, "I did not have Kimberly Guilfoyle scratching her balls on national television on my 2024 bingo card."
Right behind Donald Trump's
Right
head.
behind him. Yes. It's almost like she's endorsing the pussy grabber by grabbing her own pussy. That's truly... You con man, real estate fraud father-in-law that you think you're going to get in the will some kind of way and you're going to have some power, your solidarity there, but I'll grab my own pussy.
Hey, can I ask you something? Because you hear a lot of Democrats try to boost Gavin Newsom. When you realize that Gavin Newsom was married to her, you know, crazy doesn't just start at
which
nowhere.
I did not realize until just I didn't know until just recently, and now I'm afraid that unfortunately makes me question his judgment, and I don't think I could ever give him my presidential vote because he's got to have something wrong with him. To be fair, did she have some kind of horrendous accident, car wreck, fall off a building that affected her brain as she had the Shibata brain surgery or anything where before she was normal and now she's like this?
I don't know. Hold on. Let me move past it because it's a GIF that you posted. It just keeps repeating over and over again. It's
yes.
pulling me in.
Well, you better be glad she didn't have a hold of you. She would have stuffed you in.
What was your question? No, I don't think she had a horrendous accident or anything that I know of. I think it's just, she's older than Don Jr. by at least 10 years, maybe 15 years.
No, I'm talking about Newsom. If he had anything to do with that in his real life.
Gavin Newsom's a very polished, certainly he's a mover-upper. He certainly he has an agenda and everything, but you look at that and then you look at the state of California, more importantly, I don't know, but I guess real quick on this topic, would you step in if your country said, Jim Cornette, we need someone with your reasoning, let's just stop there. Your reasoning, would you step in and run for president right now?
Are you out of it? No, it's completely ridiculous. Obviously, that wouldn't happen even if we were on the planet Neptune. I'm more qualified than Donald Trump, and that's obvious because almost every human being in the world would be more qualified. Because at least even if it was a criminal, it wouldn't be a malignant narcissist criminal. Or at least if it was a malignant narcissist criminal, he also wouldn't be a pathological liar and a scumbag and a fucking serial a sexual abuser and a goddamn white-collar criminal. But ignoring all those other things, no. But here's what I might do. I might run for president if I could win just to nominate somebody that would actually be a good fucking president. All right, now that I'm the president, this guy's going to be the president. Fuck all of y'all. I'm going home. At least somebody with some fucking logical sense would be doing that job. But no, people who shouldn't be in charge of everyone's life and liberty and lawmaking should realize that. And that goes for all parties, but especially the fucking batshit crazy one that gives us handjob Boebert and Marjorie Treason Green and all these unserious fucking idiots who think just like their constituents, who are redneck, hillbilly, stupid fucking people. I'm sorry, if you vote for fucking Lauren Boebert to go to Washington, you're a stupid fucking person. Because these are not real, legitimate, serious fucking politicians. Republican or Democrat. John McCain would look like Barack Obama to me right now. I would fucking hoist him up on my shoulders. At least he wasn't a goddamn criminal simpleton. Fuck.
All right, well, before we move past the
and they're all
review,
Republicans against Trump. And by the way, George Conway is now, I've never made a political donation in my life. Kids, illnesses, and animals get all my money if I donate to anything. But he has started a a political action committee, basically the anti-psychopath committee. And he started with like $343,434.34, all 34s for all 34 felonies that Trump's been convicted of so far of his own money. And they're raising money, and the goal is to show everybody in the world, as if they couldn't already tell by turning on a television or reading a newspaper, what a fucking psychopath this goddamn guy is. And I'm going to send them some fucking money, because I want to be part of that. Because at least, depending on how many stupid fucking pod people we got in this country, at least I can either say thank fucking God, or I told you all so after November. But I will have done something to try to preserve our goddamn democracy from these fucking literal shit brains.
All right. Well, some of that may get on YouTube.
Possibly.
We'll see, but
it's going to be a hell of a piece for the podcast, isn't it?
Well, we'll see about that. But Jim, speaking of a hell of a piece, why don't we talk about AEW Dynamite, which aired on the 17th of July. It was a big episode. It was in Little Rock. They're debuting a new building.
A big episode in Little Rock. That sounds like Lance Russell's TV pitch that time. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be back with a big midget match.
Well, I don't think we had that necessarily on this episode, unlike some other episodes of AEW Dynamite, but a very memorable match to start things off.
And they were in Little Rock, Arkansas. It wasn't the old Barton Coliseum at the fairgrounds. A bright new, well, not a bright new arena, a big new arena that had a lot of fucking lights turned off. And I know that I will say this, they couldn't have had a better match to get that number of people to be as loud as they were for an hour than MJF and Ospreay. And, here's the thing. Everybody already knows it's not a spoiler here. The MJF and Ospreay for the international title went 59 minutes, 58 seconds. And so we can't do a blow-by-blow description of, well, they did this and that and the other thing. I wrote down thoughts and comments. And by the way, I do want to send a special shout out for the guy in the front row with the beautiful Bobby Eaton t-shirt on. You got good taste, pal.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yes, it caught my eye because I recognized the design, and there it was. But this was... And I had a few issues with it that I will talk about, but this was levels above what the professionalism that is usually on display in a variety of fields on AEW television, not only in the ring, but also, I'm sorry, this couldn't have been Tony's idea to do this. This is... For somebody who claims to be a fan of, wrestling from way back and, a good quality product, Tony's booking is just insane. It's, it was melded or molded by the internet marks of the early basement E-Fed days, as I'm now coming to know it was a thing that was going on with these people. But this is as old as you can get. This would be Sam Muchnick, a fucking teasing an hour Broadway and then a title switch to come back, I would think, with a rematch at Wembley Stadium so that fucking, I would think, Ospreay can get his big win in front of his home crowd because these two are obviously the top guys in the company now. And but you know what I'm saying? It's as old school booking as you can get. Now, the question I had was, these days, it's not like the territory days. The fans were used to long programs with regular rematches between guys or teams. And in a weekly territory, some guys would wrestle 15 weeks in a row, but with different stipulations, and they do hot finishes to lead to rematches, and the business would build and be biggest when they finally did the blow-off. In modern years, it seems like that's reversed itself, and the first match between two, people that somebody care about is the big one, and then, now that they've seen it, they want something else because they all know it's a work and blah, blah, blah. And people almost look, some of these fans in AEW, I've seen actually, well, they gave us a rematch. Like that was a bad thing. That was what you shot for the first 100 years of wrestling, was having a fucking rematch. It meant the first one was good enough to bring back. But anyway, then I thought, but that's only really for the mainstream fan at this point. Nobody is watching AEW if they're just a casual wrestling fan. They would have laughed it off a long time ago. So for their core audience, Brian, I guess what I'm saying is they can probably get away with MJF and Ospreay after this a number of times because people will know that, well, fuck, it's going to be better than anything else they give us. So for that audience, I think this works. Do you agree?
I think, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there are no casual bumping in the wrestling people just happening to watch this show.
Yeah. But I mean, also that they would be accepting of rematches with these guys because of what they saw here.
Yeah, MJF tells in-ring stories.
Yes.
The follow-up is on AEW. Whether they follow up on it or allow him to figure out a way to follow up on it, whatever it may be. Ospreay is good in the ring. He's great in the ring. He's got charisma on his promos. He's never been produced for American television ever.
Yeah.
And those are the things around the edges that need to be worked on. And I thought in this match, he showed a lot of little things he hasn't showed before, especially in the face with the selling. I thought his facial reactions are really good.
Well, see, that's the thing. He's like, we've mentioned it with other people. And I think at one point, Darby Allin, Swerve, Ospreay is best when he's matched with a wrestler, not a gymnast. When he's matched with a gymnast, then they try to outdo each other, and it just goes too far, and there's no baby face and no heel and no story being told, and it's just flipping. But when he's matched with a wrestler, then it's the baby face foiling a heel with fancy moves that he's doing, and he's not doing as many of them because the other guy ain't going to fucking put up with it. And he's also, there's not as many flips overall because the other guy ain't doing them. Now with MJF, he can actually do the fucking flips. He's just smart enough that he doesn't do a lot of them. And he figures out a way to put them in the spot where it makes sense, where people will pop not on some big bump, but that he landed on his feet from something, or he had a shocked expression on his face, or whatever the fuck. You see what I'm saying? So this brought out the best in Ospreay. And I'm becoming a fan as you said earlier, if he can be produced for American television to get away from something, because remember, he's been in New Japan. And that's where you learn most of these bad habits that we see now. Anywhere in Japan, because they all do the same shit now, just like over here. And the UK scene is predominantly indies. And they have indies that sometimes draw a few thousand people. But point being, they need to get him an experienced veteran producer that can just work on his matches, that wants to teach him. And not just to do all of this shit, but what to do and when, and work on his match structure rather than his execution of moves. But anyway, and I saw somebody on Twitter say, well, I knew they were going a long time because they started so slow. They didn't start at 100 miles an hour because they didn't have to. The people were there already. They wanted to see this. MJF got the heel reaction. Ospreay got the babyface reaction. You weren't in doubt by the way they worked the match. It was obvious who the heel was and who the babyface was. So that was a big help right off the bat. And they kept it moving, even though they were going an hour, but it was ebbs and flows. It was peaks and valleys. There was stuff for them to sell. So, that was, and honestly, I don't see how they remember all that shit to keep it fresh for a fucking hour. But do you see a little Candido when MJF is selling like a heel?
Yes, I could see that. Especially, when Chris got into really good shape in ECW, not that MJF's that ripped or anything, but it's not that crazy body type. They look somewhat similar.
But the where he'll take the flat back bump and bounce to his feet with the rubber legs and the cockeyed expression, or vice versa, face first and then back, or just again, both of these guys
two naturals, Candido and MJF.
They can both sell. MJF may be the best heel seller to me right now in the business when he has a match like this, because it's the perfect heel body language. And everybody knows heels and baby faces don't sell anything remotely alike. I would think everybody knows that. Well, you can't tell sometimes from watching television. The baby face sells to get sympathy, to exhibit pain, hurt, the facial expression, to be beaten down. He's the underdog. He's trying to fight back against this evil oppressor. That's the way he sells, more realistically and cringily and the body, whatever. Whereas a heel, he's got the chance to oversell. The people love it when he takes a bigger bump or has an exaggerated facial expression, or they want to see him get the shit kicked out of him in a faster paced and more picturesque way. Whereas the heel gets the heat on the baby face in a more deliberate and occasionally violent way to try to elicit the sympathy for the comeback. So MJF sells like fucking heel, like crazy, and Ospreay did a tremendous job selling as a babyface with his facial expressions and cringes and the steamboatishness of the way he would grip body parts and things. So, and by the way, here was a random note that I made. MJF and Will Ospreay should both be making approximately 10 to 15 times what they're paying Okada. Because he's not even in the same league. He shouldn't be allowed in the same fucking ring as these two guys.
Forget about Okada. How about the Young Bucks?
Well, I'm just saying, of the recent multi-million-dollar acquisitions, I'm not talking, everybody knows that.
I'm talking about value to AEW. What you just said is, Will Ospreay still has to prove himself, but it's early and the results are good. But MJF, by far, is the biggest thing AEW has. They'd be stupid not to throw every dollar they could at him, especially because Tony can. Tony can make
he doesn't even have to throw them. He can just flip them like Frisbees.
Listen, if Tony wants publicity, pay MJF more than Dwayne. That'll get publicity.
There you go.
He paid him $35 million a year? Holy shit.
But no, I'm just saying, if I sat down as the head of a wrestling company with anybody I've ever worked for, Dusty Rhodes, Bill Watts, Jim Crockett, fucking Vince McMahon even, and I showed them tape of MJF, and I showed them tape of Will Ospreay, and I showed them tape of Okada. And I said, and whatever the numbers are, but I said, I paid $1 million for each of these guys. They would agree with me on MJF. They would agree with me on Ospreay, and they'd look at Okada and say, what the fuck have you done? What are you, a fucking imbecile? I'm just saying. So then, both guys, their stuff had snaps. They were not snaps. Both guys had snap.
Hey,
they were jive and the beatniks. They were laying their chops in. The fake forearms weren't there. If they were going to hit each other, they They attempted to fucking make it look like a contest. They look like athletes. They're in shape. They weren't working sloppy or just doing ridiculous dives. I have an issue with all at the point that they went out on the floor, and I know about every minute one of them would roll under the ropes to break the count. At that point, I appreciate the effort, but guys, but it's modern wrestling. You got to be on the floor.
Yeah. When you say "but guys," do you mean you guys shouldn't be on the floor that long, or don't even waste your time breaking up the count because no one else is? What are you saying?
Well, either or both, maybe, because see, the thing is, it's easier to watch on television and not really realize because you're caught up in the different camera angles and the close-ups. You know what's going on, but when you're in the arena, when you can see the whole picture, when you're sitting in the stands and you see the referee counting to 10, 1, and then 2, or maybe he just stops counting already and just gets out and asks them, please get back in. And they're just out there for a minute and a half. I'm not talking about these guys, but I'm talking about general in any match. And guys are out there for a minute and a half. It looks bad because it just takes you out of it because you can see everything. It's easier to overlook that on television, but God damn it, is there any reason you can't do 20 or 25 seconds on the goddamn floor and roll a guy in and fucking take a bump out the other side instead of you? But they're setting up. Here's another thing. When they went out in the stands, I'm not a fan. Because the pros are not worth the cons. And so I'm saying when they're on the floor a lot, they're setting up flips or moves on the barricade, which that's awful close to the people. And it gets a little stagier out there and a little more dangerous. And it's harder for people in the building to see. Yes, they can watch the screen, but did they come there live to watch television? But when you go out in the stands, the legal liability is not worth it. Because let's say you've got the guy in front of you and you're punching him in the head right there, but you're drawing back and your elbow hits the fucking kid in the face that had to look around with his phone. And they do that in the indies. They've been doing it in the indies for 25 years. That's because anybody at an indie show at a rec center, so I ain't got anybody to sue here. They ain't got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, as Mama Cornette used to say. But they know Tony Khan's a billionaire. And they'll get sued too. It's not worth the legal liability. It's dangerous in terms of up there on the concrete fucking stairways and in the middle of the fans where you're trying to be fighting in a small area and not hurt anybody, but you'll slip in beer and you'll break your fucking ankle. Whatever the fuck. It's not a controlled environment. Where, yes, they've got security guys standing there while they're, thankfully, these security guys are not the Secret Service either because they're used to the fans wanting to pat them on the back. If some guy did get drunk and just, I'm going to punch somebody in the face, they'd be there and gone before these guys know what the fuck. And you're doing close-up magic with people all around you only feet away. So you got to lay the shit in or it looks phony. And that means you're probably going to get potatoed. So fighting in the stands in the crowd is something you do at shows in bars in indies, not at a major company. Which is why if you see anybody in the WWE going through the crowd, even Jey Uso, as much as they love him for his entrance, it looks like he's got Secret Service along with him, right? And they've got an expensive camera with him. But they're not out there just goddamn hitting each other with fucking garbage cans. Do you see what I'm saying, Brian?
I do.
So, however.
And then there's the however.
Having said that, when Ospreay stood MJF on his head in the garbage can, that was fucking hilarious. But they stretched the count out. But it's good, at least. It didn't look fakey. The fans were into it. So, these guys, if you're that good, and if the fans are into you, to that degree, you can stretch things. I'm not saying you can't. Some of these guys can't hit the fucking ropes right, so I'm not going to give them any goddamn leeway to go out and do more garbage shit when they can't grab a headlock. When guys are this good, and they like it, you can have a little leeway. Somehow they have made the Long Island Sunrise, the Canadian Destroyer, look plausible. When MJF gave him that fucking thing, not only MJF, he landed it perfect. They flipped, boom, Osprey, a great fucking bump. That's the closest I've ever seen that thing to be like, wow, he gave him something, rather than, well, they just fucking flipped each other. Anyway.
Can I say something here at this point?
I wish you would.
It applies to the entire match, and I posted about it on Twitter, and I got a big reaction. The commentary was all sorts of awful. I'm not blaming Taz, although Taz gets mixed up with these two chuckle fucks, and that drags him down, because there's too many times, and again, you could talk about it in this match, you could talk about it in other things. Serious things are happening, they're laughing. Excalibur is a poor communicator. He spits out lots of words, yells them out.
Hey, now be fair. He was trying to use sentences.
If you try to listen to it and make sense of it, it's hard unless you actually know already what he's talking about. He's an awful commentator, and people need to start acknowledging how much Dynamite is held back by the commentating team. And then there's Shivani. It's almost impossible to be as useless on commentary as Shivani. And you hear people say, oh, it's nice nostalgia for my youth. When in your youth was he just sitting there yelling out nothing? Even if you like Shivani. He didn't do that on TBS with Crockett. That was David Crockett doing that. He didn't do it on Nitro. He wasn't good on Nitro, but he didn't do that. Now, he did do the hyperbolic, this is the greatest night in the history of our sport. And everything's the greatest this and the greatest that, to the point where everything he says means nothing. Because everything is the best. Everything is great. He's having a great time. This is a great classic of a match. Really, it sounds like you almost were told to say that at that point. It didn't sound real. It sounded forced. So you have one guy who's yelling out stuff that sounds forced, who, by the way, is old. So he's an old guy trying to hang with these guys by just yelling out things.
Is that why he's calling the girls bitches? Because he's trying to be, with the cool kids and the hip cats?
I don't know. But for the people that want AEW to succeed, and we should all want it to succeed, but the people that are real AEW fans, one of the big come to Jesus talks is that the commentating team needs to go. And Shivani, if you want to keep him around, because he does lots of good stooge work, give him a microphone, let him be one of the 9 girls interviewing people. Excalibur needs to go back to Rosita. Until they can accept that he holds them back, that him being the lead commentator holds them back and holds a match like this back. Any other time in history...
He's a joke. He's a joke to any new viewer. Who would tune in and say, what the fuck?
He's a joke to any wrestling fan who really likes good wrestling. Because any classic match you could think of, you need a commentator who works. Lance Russell, Jim Ross, even Vince McMahon in his way for a big match, because he was the promoter. He wasn't Bill Watts, but it was the same principle. He knew what he wanted to get over. He knew he had to try to find a way to make it work. Sometimes he was ridiculous. But Excalibur, it just sounds like, you don't want to say just a fan, because we're all fans, but it just sounds like an amateur doing this big match. And this was a great match. They should have had great commentating on the match. You know what they should do? Instead of the Spanish announce feed, do a second English commentating feed. If you really want viewers, put me and Jim there. But you should do a second English commentating team with serious announcers. You got a whole bunch of people under contract. Riccaboni, Caprice Coleman, whoever else you have. Put them there. Because Excalibur and Shivani together is audio poison.
Ian Riccaboni would be a young, energetic voice that doesn't look like a fucking idiot Mark that was a wannabe fucking play wrestler for his own promotion that he helped pay for. It's just embarrassing on national television.
I'm serious. They should do a second audio feed. Give people that option. You want to see if your booking's better than everyone thinks it is? How about give us a real commentating team? If you want to keep these guys because of some weird loyalty to awfulness, do that. Have a second English commentating team, because a match like this gets ruined by bad commentary. And I saw Dave Meltzer tweet out that Shivani deserves credit.
What?
For getting this match over. There's the disconnect. He likes Shivani personally, so he makes a stupid comment that anyone who watched that match knows is ridiculous.
Well, he got the match over by saying, wow, this is a great match.
Wow, I'm so happy to be here. I can't believe they're paying me. This is amazing. I do nothing. The fuck out of here. That commentating team is so counterproductive. And I'm sorry to say that about Taz, but he's dragged in there because it's impossible to sit next to those two idiots and not have to talk to them.
Taz is, I've been there. He's like listening to these two go back and forth, and he's spacing out in his head because he's like, oh, God damn it.
And then there are other times that Taz will say something and then Shivani just repeats it like he had that thought, or then he'll say like, good call. Like he's the fucking person who should be deciding that. And then there are other times where Excalibur and Taz were almost going back and forth like commentators would, Taz and an awful commentator about the match. And Shivani just pipes in with like a non sequitur. Just out of nowhere, like, oh, isn't this awesome? Like, what? Shut up. Just don't say anything. And if Tony's telling you something in your ear, pretend your headphones don't work. But no, they're awful. Seriously, a match like this got hurt by the awful commentating. They need a second commentating team. Why not? Tony's got money. He's got the people there under contract already. Why not? You need to find a way to get people to watch this show. Make it so we can listen to it too.
Well, but back to the great match that was ruined by the awful announcing.
I didn't say that.
Yes, you did.
I didn't say they ruined the match. The match was great.
And is MJF's hammerlock DDT the goddamnedest thing you've ever seen? That doesn't look like something I would enjoy taking, but apparently he hasn't hurt anybody. They've got up and continued to have feeling in their extremities. And, you know, that's again what I liked about this positive fashion. They were both using different style, the new style of things, a new style of wrestling, but doing different shit with it that didn't look stupid or hokey, and a different or unique twist on something, or something got built up and had a payoff when, like I referred to earlier, when, you know, MJF showed everybody he could flip and land on his feet. And then Ospreay did the same thing. And they were telling a story with the flipping. I didn't think it was possible. Here's something I could do without. I'd like to throw darts at people that do this, but MJF saved it for me. Did you see the part where Ospreay's got him down? He's in front of him, right? And he does like he does and so many of the others do. He turned his back on MJF, Ospreay did, and stood there like only a foot away from him, pointing at the sky like he's on a fucking high dive, preparing to fucking run and hit the far ropes, not looking at his opponent at all. And MJF grabbed him from behind, turned him around, and bit his face. Good, which is what you ought to do if somebody you're in a fight with turns their back on you from a foot away and strikes a pose. If you did that to Dick Murdoch when you were a babyface and he was a heel, I bet you'd wake up in the locker room, because he would have just give you the rabbit punch to the fucking base of the skull and you wouldn't have remembered your fucking wife's name for 3 days. Anyway, and they did big stuff, but they sold it in between. MJF got the elbow off the top rope onto Ospreay through the table on the floor in, but this time the table held up, so he didn't have to just land on the goddamn floor and break his hip like a senior citizen locked up in a home. Again, and they did the double bridge 50 minutes in. That used to be a thing that Flair and whoever he was working with, they would try to see how deep in the match, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever the fuck, that they could do the double bridge spot with everybody involved weighing, 230, 240 pounds. And these guys did it 50 minutes in. And here's something else. When you talked about the commentary, we didn't even mention the whole story of the fucking match. They made slight references to how long the match had been going, nothing concrete until I think Tony got prodded because he said, well, I've just been told that we're at the 53-minute mark. And they were over 50 minutes in before they even started making a deal out of it.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything. Usually we hear from people at the shows that say, oh, you didn't hear the ring announcer was doing it. I didn't hear anything until the very end, like 1 minute left.
Yeah, then they piped 1 minute remaining like it was the goddamn automated fucking, answering machine message. But that's the thing is they wouldn't have been giving anything away because it's television, especially it's unusual on their program that a match would last more than 30 minutes. So what you would have probably done is at the 30-minute mark, you would have started making remarks like, well, really at this point, we're over 30 minutes, folks, and they've been keeping up a hell of a pace. And then you would have probably about every 5 minutes started registering, well, we're at 35 minutes now, Taz, and certainly how much more gas can they have left in the tank at the speed in which they've been moving and the punishment. And then you start building that. So that by the time you get to 55 minutes, you're going, my God, now the question is, can either one of these guys win this thing? And especially if you know somebody is, that's when you start being convinced as announcers that it's a draw. And they just, at 53, oh shit, we forgot. We need to really start fucking building this up. So I don't know what was going on there, because that's part of the whole story of the fucking match. I mean, did I miss something? Because you listened to them to get mad more than I did.
No, and they suck. No, I don't think really too much was said about the specific time other than they were going a while. And it went by, it didn't feel like it was as long as it was because it was moving and it was good. And the guys were doing a great job of selling everything, with their faces and everything, the whole bodies. They didn't say anything until 1 minute. That was it.
And again,
they talked a lot about the humidity. I don't know if you heard Excalibur attempting to explain humidity to wrestling. What the hell is going on with that announce team?
Well, and he's not a meteorologist, by the way. He didn't. He's trying to play one on television, like trying to play wrestling announcer. And also those guys, I have seen Flair go 60 with the best cardio in the industry at the time, documentably provable by his resting heart rate and all of these goddamn athletic commission fucking readings I used to see him give. And he'd still be drenched in sweat in a fucking arena with air conditioning after going 60 minutes. These guys are in shape. Their cardio's incredible. And again, I think Ospreay has the reputation for it. People think MJF, for some reason, can't either do the flips or can't fucking, in their minds, he can't wrestle. He doesn't do all those moves. He can. He's just smart enough to only do them every once in a while. Fucking dipshits. But anyway, at a minute left, they really, this has been better than watching almost anything else on AEW television. Here's one more thing. And this is, again, the psychology of these new modern type of folks. But Ospreay goes for the Tiger Driver that he's sworn that he would never do again because he almost fucking hurt Danielson, or what did hurt him, but not permanently, whatever the fuck. But they've been fighting for 58 minutes. He's defending it, 59 minutes. He's defending his championship. He's got MJF up for the fucking thing, and he puts him down because he don't want to do it. And you heard some people in Little Rock kind of, because it's fucking stupid. And this guy's been healing him and fucking turned on his friend and has been poking him in the eye and kicking him in the balls, doing all this shit, drop him on his fucking head. He deserves it. It's goddamn wrestling. And I have been in front of crowds in Little Rock, Arkansas. I assure you, if I had been tied to 4 different horses from my appendages and they shouted, "Ah!" the fans would have cheered highly. So that's another thing. He does in the regular fans, not these. I don't know what the fuck is going on with the sheeple that completely buy into this whole modern wrestling thing. But the average fan goes, well, fuck. He deserves to get beat now. Is this move illegal? No. Would he got disqualified? No. They've done every goddamn thing else to each other to try to fucking cripple and paralyze and put each other in an iron lung and a goddamn body cast. But he's got the guy ready to go, and he won't do it. He deserves to get beat now.
I think people understand. They've kind of established it. He's afraid to do the move because he's afraid that's the one thing he can do to seriously hurt someone beyond
exactly. And MJF is the goddamn biggest heel. That's what they want to see him hurt.
And when he finally does it to him, people will go crazy.
Okay, well, the point, then they shouldn't have had him tease the goddamn move.
But that's the whole tease. The whole tease is for he can't do it. He's afraid to do it eventually.
He's a pussy.
Well, the whole tease is that he's going to eventually do it. He'll eventually get past this for whatever reason and do it. Yeah, but they're establishing it now.
After his guy comes over to my house once a week and kicks me in the balls for 3 or 4 months, I guess I'm going to fucking do something about it one of these days. Fuck him. If he had the fucking heel ready to go and defend his title with a legal move and he wouldn't do it because he's a fucking pussy.
He's a baby face.
And a goddamn baby face has to have some fucking balls to it. You think
you're being overly critical.
Would Stone Cold Steve Austin have stunnered the motherfucker?
He is not Steve Austin. That's not a fair comparison. No,
okay, well,
most baby faces are not Steve Austin.
Because Steve Austin was the biggest baby face in the history of the business.
Because he was a heel. Because he acted like a heel, which is what made him a baby face.
But he did that shit to the fucking people that deserved it, and MJF is the hottest fucking heel in the company, and he deserves it.
They're teasing it so that eventually he's going to hit it. They think it eventually will get a big pop. And then he'll win the match the one time he uses it.
He's fucking soft. Anyway, he didn't do it. And then MJF pushed Ospreay into the referee and he got the ring. We needed to see him get the ring better. It was revealed after the fact, but
the table spot earlier in the match, when MJF went on to him on the table on the floor, the camera was in an awful position there too. You couldn't see anything. It was like next to the table on the floor. So you didn't see anything. They're missing a lot of shit with the camera shots lately.
Well, that's because they only have a certain amount of angles they can shoot in that building before they reveal what's behind the curtain.
You know, I didn't even think of that. You know what? That's exactly what
they have to play. They have to, and look up the attendance while I'm going over the rest of the finish here, but that's a big building and they had to be judicious. They have one crowd shot where they can shoot the stands with a wide shot and there are people, and they have the hard camera shot and the floor camera. One of the handhelds has to shoot the people in the ring with the screen behind them because there's no people at that end of the building. But if they shoot the screen, you're seeing the screen with a different camera angle in some aspects is on the screen than they're taking for the broadcast. So you're seeing a guy looking at himself on the goddamn video screen. It's disorienting. But anyway.
Hey, the numbers, just so you know, as of the morning of the show, we don't have the final numbers just yet, but there were 2,603 tickets distributed. And again, it's their debut in the venue.
But how big is that building? How big is the building? Not what was it set up for? How big is the building?
The Simmons Bank Arena. Hold on one second. I'll
go back to the finish. MJF got the ring while he was down and Ospreay had been pushed into the referee, but you couldn't see it. It was revealed after the fact, but you didn't see him pull it out. I believe that the people they popped on the finish, but I believe they would have popped bigger if they'd understood exactly what happened, because there was a little delayed announcement after the bell rang. I don't know, but boom. MJF nails him, one good shot, boom, covers him, 1, 2, 3. And apparently the ring flew out of the ring. and they got a camera shot of it laying on the mat at ringside. But
so at least you saw it, yeah.
Yeah, so at least you saw it. But in 59-58, MJF is the new international champion. And I would immediately rematch this for Wembley Stadium, because why the fuck wouldn't you? That's the whole idea of the thing, I would think.
I thought the delay from the pinfall to the announcement was great, because you can kind of hear the fans. They saw it. They know what happened. Did it really happen? Did this really happen? And then,
well, yeah, and they were murmuring because they had the countdown on the screen finally, and they had the seconds. So you saw the pin at 2 seconds, but maybe somebody wasn't looking at everything and thought, was it a draw? What happened? It's a draw.
Because it seemed like it was going to be a draw. Once you realized they were going long, the first thought I think most people had was they're going to go to a draw.
Yeah.
And then,
well, obviously that was the intention.
And they took it to the very end. And what do you think of MJF? The work he's doing, reestablishing himself right now as a heel. In this match specifically, his behavior, going into the crowd. I know you're not a big fan of it, because one day some guy will be like tackling him or something in the crowd.
Or there's just going to be an accident, a simple accident that's going to cost everybody some, if not money, aggravation. And I know Tony would obviously pay legal judgments for all the boys also, but you got to do depositions and blah, blah, blah. It's not fucking worth it.
But going to the very end and cheating to beat Ospreay, who the fans like, it's almost like he ripped off the fans too, because they all expected the draw.
Yes.
No one expected a heel to cheat.
Well, that's what he said in his interview. I'm going to fuck up the things and people that you like. I'm going to take away your enjoyment of these. It's the whole jealousy thing from his disorder. And it fits here, and he pulled the rug out from under him. So, and again, it's logical and exactly fits what his reasoning for turning was. And as far as heel work in the ring, he worked as a babyface because he was over before as such the ultimate heel that didn't break character, as the kids say, and didn't do anything that wasn't true to MJF. And then he just started doing it against people that the fans wanted to see that done to, the other heels. And then he could change that around to, now you like the kangaroo kick, or I poke him in the eye and yay. But that's not a long-term thing. That's not getting over because of what you're doing as a babyface. That's getting over because of what you did as a heel was so fucking brilliant. So you can have the short-term babyface run. In the territories, this was easy to do. But you can't build a natural heel for a multi-year national wrestling career as a fucking babyface. He has to be a heel to establish himself to everyone, and that's the way he gets over, and then they begin liking him. So as the audience, when he finally does go to where the big boys play, to coin a phrase that's never been used before, he's going to have to establish that to a whole new audience, and within a few years or whatever it is, he will be so over as that level of a performer that they'll make him babyface again. Just a lot more people watching and a lot more money on the line.
Yeah, really, looking back, you have to wonder how counterproductive it was. And we thought it was at the time, but now looking back at the results, for Jericho to start talking about he thinks MJF needs to be a babyface, it's going to happen, just watch it happen. You put it in everyone's mind, and then you kind of forced it before it was time.
Yeah, he wanted to make it happen so he could work with him. And but anyway, that's the thing. To answer your question, yes, he established his reasoning, his motivation. His match here was overall excellent and levels above, what everybody else around there is doing. And Ospreay, I'm a fan of his when he's with a talent like this, instead of somebody where they're just going to go out there and fucking Cirque du Soleil me to fucking death. They soleil me.
Building capacity, 18,000 people.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know what that's for exactly, if it's
40
basketball
years
or something
ago,
else.
you could have got fucking half of Little Rock in there.
This is North Little Rock, too. I don't know the exact distinction. Across the Arkansas River from Little Rock, I guess. Okay.
North Little Rock is now where many of the fancier facilities of various things are located, I understand. A little more hoity-toity over there these days, but it's the same city. It's just there's a river in the middle. It's, but an 18,000-seat building, and they had 2,600 tickets out if nobody had severe diarrhea or whooping belch that day and wasn't able to come. So no wonder they couldn't shoot most of the fucking building.
The comparisons, the late era WCW have always been there for AEW, but in a lot of ways, it's really more 1989 WCW right now, where Flair and Steamboat are having classic matches in empty buildings. The Superdome, Chicago for the pay-per-view. I don't remember how many people were there for Nashville.
Well, no. Hold on now. Chicago. No, I would think at least I could, hold on. Wait a minute.
Yeah, how many people were there?
Hold on. I got to reach. I'm not as young as I used to be.
But you have matches that smart fans think are classic. And again, this was a great match.
Yes.
But people aren't paying to go to those matches. Now, with that said, and we'll talk about the ratings a little later, as anyone would have thought, clearly this is the one match with the two guys that intrigued and held the audience more than anything else they have. The problem is they don't have much else. And I also fear they're going to somehow reintroduce Daniel Garcia into this thing.
Well, if they want to wheel him out on a gurney and let him be in the corner of Osprey to watch him try to get even, then that's lovely. They can. And by the way, yes, I agree with you. Superdome was an empty building. And which other place did you?
Nashville.
Nashville was I wasn't there, but it was empty. But no, Chicago, the house was $69,700 for ticket prices at the time. There was probably around 5,000 to 6,000 in a 10,000 seat building. So it wasn't empty. It just wasn't good. Yeah. That's the same building we had sold out 7 shows in a row like 2 years before.
But there's a lot of similarities there in that, TV numbers may be there, may not be there, but it's about people coming out and wanting to see it. This is the one match. I mean, we'll see what they do, how they're going to propel this, how they'll keep it going. But these are the two guys that are the most intriguing in the entire company right now, by far.
So anyway, I have to applaud young Willie Apter. I just like the way Dusty would say Bill Apter's name. But Willie boy, you done good there. Wonderful Willie Osprey. That's what it should have been.
Dave Meltzer in The Observer, 5 3/4 stars on the 7-star scale.
Well, it's because Kenny wasn't in it.
Yeah.
Dave still has a soft spot for his nephew Kenny. But anyway, that was the first, hour and 5 minutes of the program. Is that correct?
Give or take. Yeah, just about.
Then we came back to earth, ladies and gentlemen.
And then Dynamite started.
Boy, yeah. Oh, and gee, many Christ, I'm just going to just real quick. So, is the new girl interviewer's name Arky Ara?
I didn't know what they said.
Arky Ara.
Yeah, I don't know what they said. I heard that too, and I was like, what was that name? And then who is this person? Yet another interviewer.
Well, Mark Briscoe, the Acclaimed pitched to Mark Briscoe to be partners with him in Blood and Guts. I thought they had settled these goddamn teams. Or were we just trying to put the pieces together as best we could based on information we had?
We settled the teams.
Well, it's going to be the teams we settled, apparently. But the Acclaim did a promo in a kind of a silly and not a disingenuous kind of attitude, whatever it was. I don't know. And Mark, said it was okay with him and brought in Swerve, and Swerve said okay. And that was so it's Swerve and Mark and the Acclaimed, and who else are we leaving out?
Darby.
And Darby, little Darby.
Swerve said okay, it just took him 2 minutes to say it.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to get to the point.
He never gets to the point.
He will beat completely around that bush.
It's like he's a Shakespearean actor. He just comes out there like this. And for I to be in this match, I will be. What is he saying half the time?
Too okay or not too okay? That would be the question. And then Nana would ask the question, who's okay? They're okay. All right, and then we had the Learning Tree segment where Jericho and Big Bill and Brian Keith come out again and drive away viewership. And I don't know about you, Brian, but I couldn't listen to this. I'm in the mood this week. They did replay the fireball that missed Hook's face, and then Jericho driving Samoa Joe through an obviously fake drywall wall with a forklift from last week. So, am I the only one that is looking at them going, why the fuck are they driving him through a goddamn giant sheet of drywall that's not supposed to be there? Was this some kind of goddamn George Lucas special effects bullshit that I was not aware of? That nobody else saw this?
You know, you heard it about Russo in the 90s, and it wasn't true. But do you think maybe there's a chance that Vince McMahon sent Jericho to AEW to contribute his booking ideas?
But no, it's not even that. I'm not trying to defend the goddamn idea. I'm trying to defend the actual quality control of people with fucking eyeballs with pupils in their eyes connected to an optic nerve that will register the impact on the brain of sight that looks like shit. Why would you put that on that wasn't cable access special effects? Why would you air that? Why would somebody not say, no, this looks too fucking hokey and phony and rotten for us to put it on a television show that costs this much money? You're
right. You're 100% right. It looked like shit. It was a bad idea. It shouldn't have been done, but Chris Jericho has lots of look like shit, bad ideas that get on TV.
Then spend more money to fucking make a real wall. God damn it. Anyway. So, and then they're doing the promo, and when Jericho says, who would be crazy enough not to listen to me? They play the music, and out wanders Minoru Suzuki. Haven't we seen this?
Well, remember, before Forbidden Door, Suzuki showed up on the screen teasing he was going to be part of their team and then actually challenging Jericho, and then that wasn't at Forbidden Door. And I guess he has some available dates.
Wait a minute. Wasn't that supposed to be at Forbidden Door?
I don't know. They certainly teased it like you would think it would have been.
Because they had 15 other matches. I just didn't think about it. But no, he said, no, I don't want to be on your team. I want to fight you. So, well, anyway, I thought we had seen it months ago because I seem to remember that we figured that the total age would be 109.
Oh my God, are we getting that at Wembley? It just hit me.
Well, apparently. No. I'm sorry. Well, no, he growled next week.
Oh, next week. Okay, good.
Next week. Yes. I'm referring to my notes. And he had the paper where it's an FTW title match next week, and Jericho's Stooges are barred, right? When they went face to face in the thing, and then Suzuki grabbed Jericho and headbutted him and knocked him down, and there's Jericho's 7-foot giant fucking stooge bodyguard and his bounty hunter, Brian Keith, with the fucking Billy Jack hat or whatever. And they stare at this bow-legged, sway-backed, goddamn 60-year-old man that just headbutted their boss and don't do a goddamn thing as he smiles at him and waves bye-bye. Am I lying, Brian?
No, you're not lying, Brian. I'm not lying, Brian, either, for the record.
All right.
No, and again, if you're not already a fan of Minoru Suzuki from his limited appearances in AEW, you just saw some guy come out there and be presented like the baddest guy you've ever seen, and he doesn't look like it. And We've seen him work enough in the last few years. The work isn't there anymore either. And you can say the same thing about Jericho's work. Now you're going to put them in a singles match?
No, come on. As much as we like to point out Chris's flaws, he is goddamn Jushin Liger next to Suzuki.
It's going to be the biggest tragedy to hit Nashville since Patsy Cline's plane went down. Where's Charlie Dick? Yeah, this is going to be I don't think this will be a good match. That'll be my guess.
Biggest tragedy in Nashville. Well, anyway, and speaking of tragedy, when your ship is sunk and the captain's drunk, it's tragedy. In the back were the Buckaroos, and who have pretty much been the major contributors to putting them in this position, and their friend Cody. And they put on their growly voices, and the kids did their promo, and Cody stands there because he couldn't call either one of them bitch. But then Mercedes Moon walks in, and she's doing some of her banter that is apparently scripted by Alexandra Pepperday.
No one ever talks like that ever anywhere. What is that way she talks to people?
I don't know what's happening here. But then Okada whispers to Maddie, I think it was, and says something to him, and he says, well, he wants you to do your dance. And she does her little stripper dance for him. And then said, well, in Toodaloo or whatever, takes off. And there is their new billion-dollar baby, as Alice Cooper used to say. That's what his entrance music ought to be. And he's fanning himself like he's sweating in his suit and like he's goddamn 16. This is their multi-million-dollar investment from Japan. His work looks like he's just gotten out of a goddamn rehab facility for a fucking medically induced coma. And they're portraying him as just as much of a fucking child as these two that have latched onto his jock and are swinging from it like two trained fucking chimpanzees.
He left Japan for this. How are you supposed to take this guy seriously? He left Japan. Forget about signing with AEW over WWE, looking at the roster and the future of the company and just every single thing to be a top star in the business, to do these kind of segments and these kind of skits. For everyone that heard how upset he was about his time in TNA. Are these TNA skits? Are these Vince Russo TNA skits? Like, what are these? Don't sexualize the women. Sasha danced and this guy's ready to come. What the hell's happening on this show?
I'm ready for him to go.
And Takeshita can't get booked. Meanwhile,
I forgot
you want to talk about Japanese imports to AEW? Konosuke Takeshita had more potential, still does, more potential, more ability in the ring, more believable as a heel than anyone else they brought over, and they've buried him with bad booking.
Well, they buried him now with no booking because I forgot he was fucking around.
He's on whatever show I guess Wardlow's on, or all these other guys that just vanished. Ricky Starks, Wardlow, and Takeshita.
We're going to find out Tony has set up a satellite territory in the Antarctic, and a bunch of these people are working that loop.
Maybe he could have a new show with his new deal, Collision 2, and it could be like the original Collision, where it's like a split roster. Everyone he won't book, but still works there on that show.
And here, this doesn't have to be an essay question, but back to something you said a minute ago. When Okada, they said he chose that over WWE. Do you think if his matches that he's had in AEW over the last 2 months, if he turned in the same kind of work in the WWE on their television right now with what they got going on?
WWE or NXT?
WWE. Well, either one. Well, okay, NXT, WWE, would his work be able to put him on Raw or SmackDown right now?
I don't think it's as bad as you're making it out to be, but it's certainly not. It's certainly not for the value, the bang for the buck that you would want for that kind of money. And again, he went to AEW because of the money, More than likely. I mean, maybe there are other minor reasons, but it's about the money.
The money in the schedule, and he knew that he couldn't fucking do the other place with the style and the schedule. Because here, they
Nakamura is the only one who came over and has been able to do it.
This guy figured, I can't fucking do this anymore. I'm broken down for whatever reason, but these marks will pay me, and I can phone it in. And, and that's why he did this, because I believe if the WWE got this and that's what he could do in their rings, they would fucking cut him. And I'm daring somebody to point me to something that Okada has done in the ring in AEW that is as impressive as even any number of the AEW guys, and that would be, I'm not talking about green guys making mistakes in WWE. I'm talking about the level of physicality, the pace, the style, and would this guy's body break under it? That's what he's soft. He's taking it easy. He does the bare minimum. There's no snap to shit, and there's no speed to shit.
And again, AEW, it is a lighter work schedule, obviously, than even NXT, because you are in the training facility, I would assume, and you're always around. AEW, it's one show a week, unless they book you on Saturday, or unless there's a pay-per-view. But it's one show a week. So if his body's broken down, you could understand why that would be appealing, plus millions of dollars.
Well, yes, and also when you said NXT, I said, well, there's an element of greenness and sloppiness, but then I realized that, there with anybody, that's not the issue we're talking about. We're talking about he's not performing that athletically. So anyway, speaking of not performing that athletically, Mercedes Moan came out to the ring, and Brian, did you see the people were standing there? I've seen more excited people at a goddamn waiting for their car at a car wash.
That's my favorite thing now, because they do the wide shot of her dancing in the ring. They've done this a few times now to the CEO, and she's, doing the sprinkle fingers down while she says CEO to herself, and the song is blasting CEO. No one in the crowd is moving. No one is yelling anything. No one is lifting their arms. No one is standing up or sitting down. Everyone just stays still.
It's like they're frozen in amber.
There's no interest or action or anything happening. No one gives a fuck about this.
And millions of dollars. And somebody on the Twitter was saying that did we ever establish that this is true in some kind of way, that they're paying Mercedes Moan more money in AEW than Becky Lynch's contract was?
I've been told a few things over the last few months about it. I was told she wasn't getting as much as people thought, which at that time was like $10 million a year. People were rumoring.
Well, I never thought that. I
heard she wasn't getting as much as people thought. Also, I heard that she was the highest paid woman in the history of the business.
Well, if people thought she was getting 10 million, she's only getting 5. Both of those things would still be true. But what the fuck? My God. My God. Thank God and Greyhound you're gone. Mama Cornette used to like that song. So here came Nyla Rose, and she got more response. She hadn't been on TV in 2 years. They were just like, yeah, beat this fucking bitch's ass.
Yeah, they wanted to see her kick the shit out of Sasha Banks is what it was.
Yeah, just get on her and get her out of here. And I don't know what, somehow, what?
Just that was your description, and I don't know what that got me right there.
Well, Mercedes gave her some kind of sloppy-ass bulldog off the ropes, and now she put on a CEO glove because of Britt Baker's glove, and tried to put Nyla Rose in Britt Baker's lockjaw and beat her with it. And you know what? That wouldn't have been a bad idea. Because the money, or the Monet or the Moan, they're going to be moaning all right. The Moan is between Mercedes and Britt Baker. So yeah, dude, but no, they didn't do that. When she put the glove in her mouth, Nyla Rose bit her fingers and she sold it. Oh, so she got a regular crossface, and then Nyla tapped out. And then she rolls out, does Mercedes, and tears up a fan sign that's wearing a Sting mask, and the fan shoves her down and takes the mask off, and it's Britt Baker. And Mercedes runs, and Britt chases her, and a security separated them, and that was there with $1 million.
They're presenting Britt like a bigger badass babyface than anyone they ever have. Hopping the rail, beating up security, doing everything she can.
Well, it's working because, I mean, and let's face it, she's much taller than a lot of the guys and heavier than a few. Okay, who was the guy that Jungle Jackoff beat up?
That was Brandon Cutler, because that's the same person that Darby Allin beat up last week when he showed up.
But that's their friend.
That's to show you how bad Jack Perry is. He'll beat up anyone.
Well, see,
he's a tough guy.
I heard him, folks. If you didn't see this goddamn acid flashback of a television show, or maybe you had some Welsh rarebit before you went to sleep, you might have dreamed it. But Jungle Jackoff was in the back, and now he's fancying himself an actor. He's really dramatically emoting. And a lot of people would think he's mad that Darby Allin hurt Brandon Cutlet, the friend and stooge of the Elite and the Buckaroos and everything. But he doesn't give a shit about Brandon Cutlet. He's just mad at Darby Allin because of this, that, and the other thing. He does his dramatic reading, but then the camera pulls back, and that's where some guy was laying there at his feet that he'd already beaten up and we're expected to believe was laying there selling for the whole time he'd been talking, but that the cameraman feeding this thing to the truck for national television wouldn't have been slightly concerned he was about to step on a fucking assault victim. And then he picks the guy up and he runs him into a door and a tank of something or whatever. But why would you still, what kind of friend are you? He's still their stooge, or did they write him off finally after 5 years? We don't have fucking, somebody, we don't have to pay him anymore. His jig is up, his job is up, whatever, or everything's going to be fine with him next week when he's doing their camera stooge work or whatever. What is going on here?
He's their stooge, they get beat up. You got to hope it's just that, because the last thing anyone wants is for any kind of follow-up on Brandon Cutler.
Well, but the announcers they just moved on. There's a guy getting banged into the fucking walls, and they moved on to the next segment and never even mentioned Cutlet's name. And did you have any comments on any of this stuff? I'm just getting to this last thing here as quickly as possible.
I repeat what I said last time. Jack Perry couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag. It's just completely unbelievable that he's in any way being presented like a badass.
He's got very feminine hips, doesn't he? A thin
he's
waist.
Like no waist. It's the
hips.
Waist. It stands out. I think the same thing. He has a thin waist. You're like, give me a fucking break. I would snap him in half.
He might look good in a bikini.
What?
He might look good in a bikini because he has those female hips on him and the thin waist.
All right. Well, maybe that'll be on a special episode of Collision.
I'm just trying to give Travis some kind of material to draw from for the. Let your imagination go wild, baby. Anyway, so Maria May came out in black and white, dressed like Toni Storm, and the fans kind of surly booed her. And she takes forever to go to the ring and takes the microphone and she won't talk. And she's just looking and doing the posing and everything. And Tony Schiavone, that's what I said earlier, he piped up, speak, bitch. What the? I mean, I'm used to Jim Ross in the Attitude Era getting carried away at some heinous activity involving a power tool and go, oh, that no good son of a bitch. But why? He just speak, bitch. Is he trying to appeal to the hep cats out there and all the cool kids?
Yeah, let's think of the options. Option 1, Tony Khan fed him that. I can't believe that. Option 2, Schiavone thought this would be a good ad lib. Meanwhile, Excalibur and Taz immediately like, whoa, you can't say that. And then option 3 is this is now going to be an ongoing running gag where old man Schiavone says inappropriate things on commentary. Say it, bitch.
Oh.
What the fuck was that?
Say it, bitch. Yeah. Say it. Bark like a dog for me. All right. And I don't know.
The commentator should be. I mean, I don't even like when they do it with MJF because it goes too far and it just sounds fake. This scumbag, he's the worst person on the planet. But the commentator shouldn't be calling anyone bitch or scumbag or anything else.
Yeah, one would think not.
Say it,
one would
bitch.
Think, say it, bitch. What's my name? But speaking of a bitch saying it, she finally did start talking and was trying to explain this angle, and the crowd whatted her to death, except they couldn't figure out with her accent. Sometimes they were off on a few of the whats, but nobody gave a shit to listen to this, and it took forever. And by the end, the fans had even stopped whatting her. They've somehow taken the people all liked Tony Storm, and then they liked what was going on. Was it just that Little Rock was getting surly, or is this now this whole thing hasn't made any sense since they brought Mitsu Arakawa into the middle of it?
I think this is a crowd that just got a 1 hour classic and it heard everything else after it, especially if it was silly or bad. Not to say this was bad, but it's silly. The whole thing is silly. She really did look like Tony Storm coming out there, if you want to say a positive. But the Tony Storm thing is all silly. And they spend a lot of time and a lot of money on this women's division. Where are the results? Where are the increase in viewers or merch or pay-per-view buys or ticket sales? But they're doubling and tripling down on it. Apparently Pepper Day has a lot to do with a lot of the women's division. I heard that Tony Khan did an interview where he said that it was a lot of the Tony Storm stuff is him and RJ City, because RJ City's the only one in AEW who has seen All About Eve and Sunset Boulevard.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So that's what we've come to.
But I've seen All About Eve and Sunset Boulevard, and I
you
would
can book.
I would go out on a limb and say that me and RJ City have almost nothing in common. But it doesn't, just because you've seen 2 old fucking movies. Don't let people near the goddamn book.
Wait until RJ City discovers the Dead End Kids.
Oh, come on. You know, well, then when we see a fucking stooge named Satch, we'll know. I think Leo Gorsey was always the star of that fucking... Anyway.
Well, you think he was the star? Or, I mean, he was obviously billed as the star. Do you think Leo Gorsey was the star?
He was the one, he was the glue that kept the gang together.
More than Hunts Hall.
More than Hunts Hall, because Hunts couldn't carry it back. Hunts was the great, Hunts was Ed Norton. Hunts was the great second banana.
Him and Ed Norton have a lot of similarities, actually.
Yeah, well, there you go, because Ed Norton was influenced by Hunts Hall.
You want to talk more about the Bowery Boys, or you want to go back to that?
No,
I could do this. I could do this all day and have a great time.
I want to get finished with this because there's one more thing.
All right.
Because this is the point that I was trying to make. Again, I watched. Again, I tried to be impressed. Again, I tried to see where millions and millions of dollars were funneled. Swerve Strickland, the beleaguered Swerve Strickland, and our friend Cody, Mr. Kazuchika Okada, or however you pronounce his first name, he moves like he just got out of fucking a body cast. Again, this match, it made Swerve look bad, I thought, because having to slow him down and or they're also, it's not just that Okada doesn't hit the ropes with any speed or enthusiasm, or as Shawn Michaels used to say when teaching guys how to take a bump, attack the mat, throw yourself into it, or snap to your fucking offense, your strikes, or just a goddamn life to your shit. But it's the other guys are treating him and these other Japanese senior citizens like that they're Fabergé eggs, and we can't hit them too hard unless it's the fucking chop exchange. And so this made Swerve look goddamn. But then and I will open the floor to your comments after I say Okada gave him the tombstone and didn't even cover him. Tombstone piledriver, no cover, pulls Swerve up and boosts him up like he's going for a pop-up powerbomb. And Okada fell backwards and Swerve landed like ass first on his fucking chest. And then Swerve popped up to his feet, jumping up and down on his tippy toes like he was fine 10 seconds after being tombstone pile driven. And Okada was selling because he had this fucking guy fall on his fucking chest. Is that what you saw?
I mean, that was a very detailed description of it, but I saw what you saw.
Is there any other comments you'd like to make trying to defend the indefensible?
I'm not defending it.
Of this fucking fellow before we move on to the afterbirth of this thing.
I'm not defending it. I think Swerve is deader by the week. You know, even when his music hits,
I'm not even knocking Swerve here, but
I
it's
am
not
a little
his
bit.
fault that he's the victim of a homicide.
Well, also, I think they need to make some change. As soon as that music hits, it's like a groan now. Like, ugh. And then it comes out and it's that awful song. He doesn't feel like the world champion right now there. Everything's based on MJF and Ospreay. That's the hot thing. Okada, you know, you get what you paid for. I don't know what people thought. He was a great Japanese star beyond the physical issues. You had to bring him over here and establish him, not put him with the Young Bucks who aren't over and think that was going to do anything. And because of the way you've booked him, whatever luster he had is gone. So, not a promising main event. To them, it's a main event with two big stars. To me, I didn't think this was going to be anything that would hold an audience.
Did Tony watch this guy's matches from the last couple of years, or did he just remember he liked him as a kid?
I'm certain Tony has seen his matches in the last few years. He's worked for AEW, I believe, before.
All right. Well, anyway, after whatever that was where everybody fell down, suddenly the Buckaroos just hit the ring and jumped on Swerve and the disqualification, and the Acclaimed hit the ring and started fighting them. Here came Jungle Jack off and Mark Briscoe. And everybody got in a fight, and then Swerve cleaned the ring. Swerve cleared the ring out, and he's the only one in the ring. And then they play the fucking music, and here comes Hangnail Page. And everybody stops fighting, so this fucking, what do they call him? The Great Value Magnum TA, the generic brand Magnum TA, fucking it comes out and gets face to face, and then they all start fighting again. And then Darby Allin's music plays. And pretty much everything stops again. And then his music plays and plays. Where's Darby? And then he comes from the ceiling like Sting. And then everybody fights again. And while the announcers are screaming, blood and guts, blood and guts, blood and guts. This is like they're going to have blood and guts, I hear, Brian.
Yeah, and by the way, someone told me, and I haven't seen the actual reporting, but I believe they said it was from Fightful, that Tony has stated, or AEW has stated, that Dr. Martha Hart gave them the blessing to do something where someone descended from the rafters. Either way, it seems in bad taste to even have to ask her for permission to do that, if that is true.
Well, besides, can you imagine how scary it has to be up there when he's looking at 16,000 empty seats? To fuck, you know, there wasn't no cushion anywhere that you were going to fucking land on. A nice fat guy in a fourth row. No, that fucking building is empty. But why is this so necessary?
Is anyone pumped up for this Blood and Guts match? Does anyone really believe in Team AEW? Does anyone care about anything with the Elite?
I think all the people that are actively involved in this match are pumped up for it. I believe they can't wait.
Well, that was Dynamite. Let's quickly do the ratings and get the hell out of here.
At least we got to some of the listener questions this week. That was a thrill to do again after having taken a hiatus, and we got to do more of it.
No, we're going to definitely do more of it. Next week, we're going to try to get some guest the program, some retro figures, and more questions here on the show. Jim, AEW Dynamite, Wednesday, July 17th, 2024, 8 to 10:07 p.m. On average, 795,000 viewers.
Oh, well, it's better than it has been, but still not back where it was before. And one would think with the Dynamite 250 and all that they advertised, but nevertheless, we got 795. It was marked down from 8.25.
It is the highest overall number since April 10th. And the highest key demo number since June 5th. So that's just recently.
So they're struggling back. They're struggling back.
Well, Jim, let's go to the quarterly breakdown. These are from WrestleNomics. Quarter 1, 8 to 8:15 p.m. MJF versus Will Ospreay. 871,000 viewers.
Okay, so that is not only up from where they have been starting, but we got to see, did the people have patience for this marathon event over the first hour? Did they hold the audience?
And for people that talk about the advertising, the key demo number for advertising, let's just say it here too, 364 to start.
Okay.
Quarter 2, 8:15, 8:30 p.m., the continuation of the match with picture-in-picture ads. 829,000 viewers, 372 in the key demo. Quarter 3.
Well, hold on here a second. Now I got to comment on that. They lost 42,000 people from quarter 1 to quarter 2. When can you remember that they lost that small a number from quarter 1 to quarter 2 and actually gained 8,000 people in their key demo?
Very rarely. Very rarely.
That to me indicates that they lost a few of the big bangers, but then some of the other people heard about what was going on and potentially switched over.
Well, quarter 3, 8:30 to 8:45 p.m. Once again, the continuation of MJF versus Will Ospreay with picture-in-picture and full-screen ads. 834,000 viewers and 369 in the key demo.
So they're staying pretty constant with the key demo, but they picked up 5,000 on the audience and lost 3,000 on the key demo. So this is somewhat bathroom break and normal fluctuation type of thing. But they're not losing an audience for a match that now has gone from between 30 and 45 minutes.
We got a quarter 4, 8:45 to 9 p.m. Once again, MJF versus Will Ospreay with picture-in-picture ads. 834,000 viewers, 365 in the key demo.
So at this, they're pretty much keeping the audience and not losing anybody. That's unusual to have 2 quarters in a row, same number. And I mean, we know these things are extrapolated, but they're not tuning out, and they're seeing that they're seeing something. There's, as a matter of fact, from start to finish, they have lost only from the start of the program to the top of the 9 o'clock hour. They only lost 37,000 people. They've never done that before.
Well, we go to quarter 5, the big 9 o'clock hour. The conclusion of MJF versus Ospreay and the post-match. The Mark Briscoe, Acclaimed, and Swerve Strickland backstage promo. And Chris Jericho and Minoru Suzuki live. Well, they're live promo, not them. They're not doing a show. Live.
Well, we're not sure about Suzuki either way. Has anybody checked his pulse?
841,000 viewers, and the high point in the key demo, 388.
Wow.
And obviously, those numbers right there are for the match that ended in the first part of this quarter. And that's a pretty interesting story, the MJF Ospreay match.
So now from in an hour and 15 minutes from the start of the program through the end of their match and beyond, they only lost 30,000 overall viewers, and that's the high point, as you said, by far, of their key demo. That's unparalleled in AEW ratings history, is it not?
I don't know about unparalleled in their history, but in their recent history for certain.
I want some numbers nerd out there to find me and publicize to us. Send it to, what is the email address?
CornyDriveThru@gmail.com.
When's the last time that in an hour, the first hour and 15 minutes, they only lost 30,000 viewers and were that steady and had 388 or whatever, the high point in the key demo?
And in terms of the 90-day trend that WrestleNomics has here, our trend line, the rating, it starts higher than usual, the drop is less than usual, and then it's well above the usual average until the very, very end. Key demo also above recent 90-day trend, the recent 90-day trend in English. So the match resonated, as you would have to think it would.
Well, now I'm looking at the overall average, and I'm saying, what the fuck? We know the last part of the show was the shites, but what the hell happened from here?
It's the same story every week, the same things that drive away the viewers every week. What do we say about Chris Jericho being in a segment to end a quarter?
Don't follow him.
Well, we go now to quarter 6, 9:15 to 9:30 p.m. The Young Bucks, Kazuchika Okada, Mercedes Moné hallway promo, an ad break, and Mercedes Moné versus Nyla Rose with picture-in-picture. 769,000 viewers.
Ooh.
341 in the key demo.
So that's the low point in both so far. They just lost 30 to 72,000 people over the course of a few moments.
The Young Bucks drive away people, but this is the learning tree. It's every week now. Chris Jericho ends a segment, and then immediately the next segment is dead because everyone turned off their TV. We go to quarter 7. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, that was it.
9:30 to 9:45 p.m. The continuation of Moné versus Rose, an ad break, Jack Perry and Brandon Cutler in the back, Mariah May's live promo, and the Bang Bang Gang's promo. 734,000 viewers.
Ouch, and there goes another 35,000.
Quarter 8, I remind you we have a 7-minute overrun. An ad break, Swerve Strickland versus Kazuchika Okada with picture-in-picture ads. 701,000 viewers. 315 in the key demo. 7-minute overrun with the finish and Team AEW in the Elite Brawling. 685.
Jeez. They've killed the Modern Family numbers.
They got two guys on this show that mean something. And one of them has been proven for a long time to mean a lot, and that's MJF. And Ospreay's elevated himself to somehow mean something there. Everyone else drives people away. What they do, who they are, what they've done, what they are on this show. Everyone else pushes people away. The stars were in the first hour, a little over an hour into the 9 o'clock hour. And that's the story. They held the audience.
Well, but they've put themselves in a position where they're world champion and a guy they paid an exorbitant amount of money to, whatever the real numbers are, was the lowest rated part of the program, and nobody gave a shit. Well, there you go.
Well, there you go, and there it is. And whose show is this? This is my show.
Yeah.
So we're going to end there. Like I said, next week, fun and hijinks return in a number of ways. This week, it's the usual doldrums. But until the experience in a few days, and next week on the rejuvenated drive-thru for Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally-ho!